Hello, Pragati.
Hi, good evening.
Hello.
Hi, Samiksha. Hi, Bindu.
I think Bindu is yet to appear
Hello,
on the
ma'am.
screen.
Okay.
Avanti, are you there? Open your video.
She's there, ma'am.
Huh?
She's there, but I am not sure. I'll just check with her about her
She has
video.
not opened her video.
I'll just check with her.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi,
sir.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, all of you.
Sir, nice to see you on this platform. This is a very different webinar.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. I saw the program. It's nice. And it is some more time, 6 o'clock.
Yeah, not 6 we'll start, sir. Because the faculty link is different, sir. And the delegates link is different.
Okay,
So
right.
that only faculties will be here.
Okay, right.
Yes, we'll start within, I think, 3 to 4 minutes.
Yes.
Bindu is there? Bindu?
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
But I can't see myself, so I was trying to set that background and try this again.
Okay. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Yeah, hopefully. Okay, there. Yeah.
Yes. Welcome, Dr. Dale.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you so much. Happy Embryologist Day, ma'am.
Yeah, same to everyone.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Good
Hi,
evening,
Bindu.
ma'am.
Good evening.
Bindu, very nicely designed
Yeah,
backdrop.
but then I'm realizing that it is quite dark. I mean,
Very nice. No, it's wonderful.
good. Okay.
Bindu
Hello,
is very good in
Bindu.
designing everything.
Hello, sir. Good evening.
Hi,
How are you?
good evening. Yeah.
Good to see you here, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, same here. And I'm all set. I'll just mute myself now whenever
Yes.
my turn.
Yeah. But
Okay,
please be
okay.
there, sir.
But be there, sir.
No, I'm here only. I'm here.
Yes,
only.
sir. Yes, sir. Hello, Dr. Pragati, ma'am.
Hi, Dr. Bindu. Hi. Nice
Dr. Rajvi.
design. Nice,
Yeah.
nice design. Nice concept.
Yes.
Celebrating Embryologist Day or IVF Day.
Yes, it's a special day for all of us. So we had to do something like this.
Correct.
Hello, Dr. Shesh.
Okay. Has Dr. Shreyas also joined?
Good evening.
Yes.
Good evening,
Good
sir.
evening.
It's what? Just 1 minute to go.
Yeah, 1 minute to go.
Mr. Mehul, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am. And we are live now.
We are already live.
6 o'clock.
Yeah. So, Sushma ma'am, Dr. KD sir is here.
Yeah, sir is there.
Yeah, good
So he
evening,
was there.
sir. Yes.
We can start
We
now.
start sharp at 6. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, just 1 minute, ma'am. Avanti is just trying to log in.
Okay. Yeah.
Just 1 minute.
Yeah,
We'll be
sure.
starting.
Sure.
Someone has started. Has someone logged in from 2 devices?
Yeah, the different, yeah.
Yeah, there's an echo sound. So if someone is logged in from 2 devices, please log out from 1. So your Dr. Rajvi, Dr. Nair sir, your webinar is over, the earlier one.
5:30. So
Yeah, good.
on dot.
I think Dr. Sonia Malik is yet to join. She said, ma'am said she will join around 5:30.
5:30 or 6:30?
Or 6:30, sorry, 6:30.
Yeah.
Avanti, all set?
Good evening.
Yeah, I think Avanti, you are joined
Avanti,
from
have you logged
sources?
in from 2 devices?
Hello.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Yeah.
Now you can hear me.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry, I was facing some technical issue.
that's okay.
Yeah.
So we shall
Shall
we
I start?
start?
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, I would start by welcoming all the faculties and delegates who have joined here to celebrate World IVF Day or World Embryologist Day with us. I would like to welcome Dr. Sushma Deshmukh ma'am, Dr. K.D. Nair sir, Dr. Pragati madam, Dr. Bindu Chandra madam, Dr. Doyle madam, and all the other faculty who are joining us today. I would like to welcome you all for today's session, which is IVF पे चर्चा 45 years का लेखा जोखा. Should we move on to the lamp lighting, ma'am?
Yes, yes.
Sure.
We light this lamp to remove all the darkness from our surroundings, as well as to enlighten us.
शुभं कुरु त्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरु त्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते शुभं कुरु त्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरु त्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः
I would now like to welcome Dr. Sushma Deshmukh madam, who is President NOGS, Secretary Indian Fertility Society. Ma'am is Director, Central India Test Tube Baby Center. I would request ma'am to please give your welcome address.
Very good evening to all. You know, friends, today is very auspicious day. That is Embryology Day or IVF Day. And it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all for the sizzling Masterstroke series of Vidarbha chapter with Nagpur OBGYN Society. Friends, this is our 26th webinar. And you know, 25th July is very important for all of us, especially the IVF connected people like clinician, embryologists, because the first IVF baby of the world, Louis Brown, was born in 1978 by untiring efforts of Patrick Steptoe and Robert Edwards. So almost 45 years back, an extraordinary, miraculous dawn of IVF has taken a start. But we can't forget our own Subhash Mukherjee, credited for the world's second IVF baby, Durga. That is on the 3rd September 1978. Remember, it is in the same year. The hardships, sacrifices of these legends, we can't forget. Their love, passion, acceptance of criticism makes me think a lot. So, देवी और सज्जनों, मैंने और बिंदु ने बुलाई है अपनी इंडियन फर्टिलिटी सोसाइटी और सभी आईवीएफ सीनियर्स. बैठे हैं हम आज सब लेखा जोखा सुनने. जानना चाहते हैं कितनी झेली तकलीफें इन्होंने. हमारे भारत देश का तो बड़ा योगदान है इसमें. और सुनो इस इतिहास के पन्नों को. जरा सोचो, जानो, फील करो इस महत्वपूर्ण समर्पण को. चलो आज चर्चा करते हैं उसी पे. So friends, let's take an IVF pledge or with some examples. India is my country and all IVF people are my guides and friends. To create a life has become our life. So we are always on the edge of a knife. Accepting all critics, our scientists work, giving Midas touch to IVF technology. And we are lucky enough to follow this red carpet path that they have created with truth and warmth. So, I love my IVF family and we are proud of its rich heritage. We are blessed with our IFS loving image. I welcome our President IFS Pitama, Dr. K.D. Nair sir, and IVF Secretary, the Beauty and Brain, Dr. Surveen Ghuman. We admire all our faculties gathered here from north to south, east to west, and we feel the ultimate harmony in it. We respect their aptitude and vision. I'm sure that we'll be enriched with their wisdom. Welcome Dr. Sadhna Desai ma'am, Dr. Sonia Malik ma'am, Dr. Pratap Kumar sir, Dr. Rajvi Mehta, Dr. Siddharth Chatterjee, Dr. Pratik Makwana, Dr. Deval Bose Pandey, and the amazing moderators, Dr. Vijay Mangoli and Dr. Shesh Padgaonkar. So we talk about safe and ethical IVF and the precious motherhood. But many facts of IVF are still in hood. We admire history, we accept and respect laws of ART, and we love all the seniors, friends, teachers, audience, and treat everyone with affection. So I welcome audience. We admire and having regards to each and every member, and have a special heartful corner for budding juniors. Dr. Samiksha Jain, Dr. Arti Kalwande, two sweet ART consultants try to view this priceless webinar necklace with all precious diamonds of IVF. And how can I forget my two secretaries, Dr. Bindu Chimete from IFS and Dr. Pragati Khadkar from NOGS, full of enthusiasm, multi-talented. As Dr. Bindu is a gifted embryologist, so for her and to all embryos of today, there are some few lines. We discuss grades of oocytes, sperms, and embryo, but embryologists are superheroes who reveal the details of embryo in vitro. They easily step in and step up. This is, the medias, and our results are bloom up. So every ART lab, so behind every ART lab, the real artist is the embryologist. Lastly, I complete my pledge. We care for our country and for well-being of our patients. We dream our IVF babies should be ace. This message of love and affection should reach to each and every place. For we IVF clinician embryologists fraternity, there is only one religion, that is humanity. Jai Hind.
Rightly said, madam. That was a very beautiful welcome address. And now I understand why you are known as the poetess of NOGS. With this, we would now move on to our next session, which is History of IVF, Euphoria or Tragedy, the Untold Story. I would like to welcome our chairperson, Dr. K.D. Nair, sir. Sir is President, Indian Fertility Society 2224, Senior Consultant of Akanksha IVF, New Delhi. Sir has 25 international presentations in ASRM meetings since 2006 and 24 international presentations in ASRM meetings since 2017. Sir, due to constraint of time, we couldn't complete your full bio data, which I know it is unlimited. I would now invite Sir to please introduce our speakers for today's event. For today's session, Dr. Sushma Deshmukh ma'am, Dr. Rajvi Mehta ma'am, and Dr. Bindu Chimote ma'am. On to you, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be part of this webinar being hosted by IFS Vidarbha chapter and Nagpur Option Gynae Society. I congratulate Dr. Sushma Deshmukh, Dr. Bindu Chimote, and Dr. Rajvi Mehta for speaking on this webinar, and I bring you greeting from the whole IFS family of more than 4,000 members spread over 29 chapters all over India. And we are all looking forward to listen to the great speaker, Dr. Sushma, Dr. Rajvi, Dr. Bindu, I just listened to Dr. Rajvi in another webinar before coming to this webinar. She was absolutely fabulous with the history of IVF. And again, we are going to listen more about the history of IVF in this webinar. Thank you very much.
I'll stop sharing, ma'am.
Yeah. I think who is sharing, Dr. Bindu? Mehul is supposed to share.
Mehul, can you start sharing the screen? Mr. Mehul?
Mr. Mehul is there? Please share the screen.
The history of IVF.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Mehul?
Do you have?
Yes,
Shall I
yes.
share?
No, I'm doing it.
Please. So make it full screen. Yeah. So friends, here we have planned to present a different perspective of IVF. That is history of IVF. Is a euphoria or tragedy. So what's the purpose of presenting this story? Because we talk with so many gynecologists, even our junior ART consultants, nobody is knowing this story. This is an untold story. So I think we decided, me and Bindu decided, and Rajvi, to narrate this wonderful story in front of you. So because ऐसा लगता है कि इतिहास के पन्नों में ये स्टोरी खो न जाए. So let's begin. Next. So we'll start with the fertilization. We all know that the human fertilization is a complex process. And childless is a problem since ancient times. And we know that since we have seen our Rajas, Rishi Munis, there were so many people were like this. And few people were unfortunate to parent a child. And really we are thankful to advanced technology and developments of IVF. We think that our patients are in really better era, that they are getting all advanced treatment. Next. And we always think that everything is coming from the Western world. And this Western world is ahead of us in many, many aspects, including scientific discoveries, instruments, and really we always wonder, admire them. We say, wow, how they can create so many things. But often belittling our own country and culture. We never try to find out our past. Next. And do you know there are some important facts? And it is very important for everyone that they should know all these facts. Next. So, and you will be surprised. We were far ahead in science, in technology, and understanding the human fertilization and embryo 5,000 years back. You'll be really surprised to know everything. Our scientists had the knowledge of everything without any high-tech equipments. Next. And where are the proofs then? You must have seen that video. Everybody has seen this video that having these carvings over the walls, or may not seen also. But here are some proofs in ancient temples. No, you know this temple? Varamuthishwara temple at Ariyathurai, Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, there is a temple. That's Varamuthishwara temple. And why this temple is becoming prominent? What is in that temple? What do we find there? Why is it getting more important? Next. Because someone has observed that there are carvings on these walls. We can see that the human sperm fertilizing the egg, and it is carved on these walls of the temple, and it was dated 5,000 years back. Next. Again, investigations were done that there are few more images we have seen. There's an ancient, and we got to know that the ancient Indians knew science of fertilization without a microscope. How it was possible for them? Next. Again, we got many images of the fetus developing. All the images, they are still carved on the temple. So 5,000 years ago, Garbha Upanishad gave these pictures of fetus developments, and know that there's a science confers to be exactly matching with our Upanishad. And these are the figures. They are more than 1,000 years back, before the world had any idea about what an embryo is. Isn't it interesting? We know our Mahabharata. We say that this is mythological stories. That birth of 100 Kauravas using test baby technique really it was like that. Next. So the first record, we can claim that the first record of test babies, the story of jars of ghee, the first evidence of Indian having knowledge of producing test babies is in era of Mahabharata 3000 BC. Strange. You may feel it strange, but it is true that there's a text relating to Mahabharata explain the process similar to the modern day of in vitro fertilization or test tube baby. If we go through how the 100 Kauravas and their sisters were born at the same time, we see that the concept of in vitro fertilization is very well explained here. And the modern day scientific technology in vitro fertilization must have been there at that time, even though we don't have records, because we know our records were destroyed. We know the Nalanda University, then so many universities that they were there existing, and the people used to visit there. The foreign visitors used to be there. So what was mentioned as jar specialized culture, maybe it may be the culture jars, it may be having the nutritious solutions. There may be so many things were there. And the Vyasa being the genius would have handled it. The cloning technique may be there. So many things must have been there. But really we don't know. Everything is behind curtain. Whether we leave it as a mythological stories, next. Because we don't have proofs. But does that mean this is all false? Because we know the many intruders and barbarians invaded us, and a lot of our advances in our fields were destroyed. We lost documents of all inventions, and we came to zero again. And we started developing and following the Western culture again, because we don't have any of our records. So should we consider this thing as just mythological? Did our ancient Rusis and scientists do any research? Is it all a figment of our imagination? Okay, then we can think it's an imagination. But if it is an imagination, we must appreciate how it is in the fullest detail. How the details were like exactly what we are studying from the modern books. So what is the real truth? I think we must know the truth. I think Rajvi, you must start telling the truth. You and Bindu, we'll go ahead. Next.
Rajvi, can you start
Rajvi?
sharing a screen from your side? Because she has added a few. Okay, she has started.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Dr. Sushma, taking us far behind and letting us know the value of our own culture. Today, we celebrate the World Embryology Day and the World IVF Day. The fact that we talk about embryology and IVF synonymously, it clearly shows us how IVF cannot exist without the embryologist. And it is a celebration that is happening across the world. Now, we do know we are celebrating this day because it was on this day that Louis Brown was born, a historical creation indeed in all aspects. We have Professor Bob Edwards, we have Patrick Steptoe, the clinician, and Jean Purdy, who actually did the work. And we have Edwards and Steptoe making this announcement, both sitting on the same podium talking together. But how did this all start? Was it just that Edwards one day decided that let us have an IVF baby, got the eggs, got the sperms, mixed them together, and there we were? He created medical history, and we know now that Louis Brown, as he says, is 45 years old and he's delivered her own kids. But how does this entire process of creation start? And it just doesn't happen suddenly. It's like I just said, Edwards thought of it, got eggs and sperms, mixed them, and lo and behold, Leslie Brown was pregnant, and there is Louis Brown. It all started in the 1950s. And in Edwards' own words, what he grew up on a farm, and he said he was always very fascinated by the field of reproduction. And that is the reason he actually went on to do his master's in endocrinology at the University of Edinburgh. And as a part of his work, he was studying ovarian stimulation. Gonadotrophins had just come into the market. And what they were trying to do is stimulate the immature mice, and they found that these immature mice started ovulating. At the same time, there was a donor insemination program on. However, they felt it would be very much useful if they could stimulate women also and, have them have more than one follicle and then do the donor insemination. But the experiments had to start in mice. So when they thought that let us stimulate the adult mice, they found there was an erratic number of oocytes, and it was impossible that one could never predict, whether the response would be 5 oocytes or 25 oocytes. And they realized that this was not something that is going to be feasible of stimulating adults, whether it was mice and maybe in the future humans. So they decided to look in for in vitro maturation, oocyte maturation. Then they could harvest the oocytes and then mature them in vitro, and then they did not have to worry about the ovarian response. And that is how Edward started his journey into IVF. It was a very, very difficult journey. He started the process of maturation and he waited for 18 hours. The reason he got the oocytes out and waited for 18 hours was because Pincus, in one of his papers, as we all know, Gregory Pincus, the father of oral contraceptive pill, had mentioned in his papers that oocyte maturation takes 18 hours. Subsequent to that, he waited and waited and waited, used feeder cell lines, he added hormones, the germinal vesicle would not break down. Then, after how many experiments and how many oocytes wasted, 25 hours later, in his own words, he saw the germinal vesicle break down and the M1 oocyte. And 12 hours later, he saw the metaphase 2 oocytes. And this is, according to me, one of the most classical studies, because 25 plus 12 is 37 hours. And this is our very, sacrosanct timing. That 37 hours post HCG is when oocyte maturation takes place. And that is the reason we do all our work around 36 hours, because we don't want the follicles to rupture. What is amazing is how did he get these oocytes in those times? The fact is that he couldn't really get ovarian tissue, because earlier he worked from cadaver tissues trying to oocytes, or women undergoing any kind of pathological surgeries for pathological reasons. But then he needed healthy oocytes. And it is here that he actually contacted Dr. Molly Rose, who was a gynecologist, who actually had delivered Edward's 2 children. And she would provide him with ovarian tissues from which he would tease and get the GV oocytes. It was felt that the major problem would have been solved with having mature oocytes, and once the in vitro matured oocytes were there, getting the sperm was not at all difficult. But it was not easy, because that next hurdle was fertilization. The sperms were achieved, the sperms were got, but the moment they add the sperm to the oocytes, no fertilization could take place. And today we know the reason, because the seminal plasma contains factors which prevent fertilization. So the sperms did not have the capacity to fertilize. And he did a very simple thing. He washed the semen sample with culture medium, got the seminal plasma out, and lo and behold, he did manage fertilization. And even today, the technique which he developed in the 1960s with minor modifications, which we call as swim up, still exists. After fertilization, the next step was he actually documented, and it was in 1969 that he actually documented fertilization, taking pictures of the sperm entering the zona, entering into the euplasm, and the evidence of fertilization. So work started in the 50s, late 60s, he shows fertilization. The next, he actually managed to show embryonic development. And the scientist that he was, he showed the documentation of the 4-cell embryo, 8-cell embryo, blastocyst. He stained them to show that these were healthy embryos and healthy blastocysts. Then came the next and very challenging part, because in vitro experiments are fine. You can show it, demonstrate it, show the world that it is possible. But if one had to transfer them, it was a big challenge, because one doesn't know the consequences. I mean, achieving a pregnancy is one thing, but waiting those 9 months to see whether the baby was healthy, and then waiting many more years to see whether she was reproductively healthy, she or he. So he took this big leap of faith and actually went on to transfer the embryo. But unfortunately, it resulted in a tubal pregnancy. This was in 1976, published in the Lancet. What he had done then was using ovarian stimulation with HMG-HCG. After all, he had started his work with oocyte maturation and gonadotrophins, but the problem he faced was shorter luteal phase, and therefore these women needed to be given progesterone. Now we know those days progesterone was only available as injectable and oil-based injection. And you can imagine that an experimental procedure is on. How many women would be happy to keep on taking progesterone injections day after day for at least a fortnight? And as he was trying to mimic the in vivo situation, he had done a blastocyst transfer. With this failure, so as to say, he then opted to go for a natural cycle. And what he did is he monitored the woman, went for a natural cycle, so there was no need for any progesterone. And he transferred the embryo at the 8-cell stage. And there she was, Louis Brown was born. And the world was awaiting this. The news of the birth of Louis Brown was flashed across the world. And in his own words, he said it was a very bumpy road. He had lots of hurdles, scientific. And as you can see, over the 20 years, he crossed each hurdle and he left a mark today, which with techniques which are still being used today. Whether we talk about his work on in vitro maturation and aspirating oocytes after 36, 37 hours, the time after in vitro maturation, or we talk about even semen processing, it's not really changed much. Of course, 10 years later, Atkin brought in the density gradient separation. This was the end of the beginning, but unfortunately, Edwards did face, it wasn't a smooth journey. He was snubbed by the clinicians. They said it was in a hurry. How can you create life in vitro? How do you know what the consequences are, whether the baby would be healthy? There were major ethical arguments. And there were Bob Edwards, because many allegations were made against him. And even in the year 2000, 22 years later, he had 8 cases in the High Court against him. For a long period of time, I thought that these were cases which were against him, but it was he who had filed these cases against people who had made allegations against him. Later, he also had a lot of socio-ethical issues. He did not face any scientific concerns because everything was beautifully documented, but he had a lot of social ethical issues. People forecasted that the babies would be abnormal. They said IVF is not really curing infertility, you're just bypassing, so what is the purpose of doing it? Even the popes were critical, and England being a Protestant country, some of them were very vicious, like you're trying to play God, and his work was called as fake. But Edwards, the way he was, he managed to go through all this with great ease and showed the world and laid the path. And subsequent to that, we know that IVF gradually percolated all across the world. Even in a country like India, where people did not think in the 70s and 80s, whether India would need IVF. I mean, why would an overpopulated country want to increase its population? After all, we thought that population was the major cause for all our problems. But even this technique reached all the so-called developing world. And the impact was so tremendous, not only giving infertile couples children, but also getting people to many other technologies to develop subsequent to that. And then finally, his work was appreciated and he received the Nobel Prize. Unfortunately, by 2008, Edwards developed dementia, and he was not possible for him to receive his own Nobel Prize. And his wife, Ruth Fowler, who was actually working with him in his master's days, who was his fellow PhD student, received the prize on his behalf. So today we celebrate not only Louis Brown and also the genius of Edwards. Over to you, Bindu.
Can you see my slide? Can
Yes,
you
Bindu.
see?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Full screen?
Yes, full screen.
Okay. So that was a wonderful account of what all the work Dr. Bob Edwards had done. And now we move on to what was going on almost at a parallel time in India. And as I said, geniosity just does not come in a jiffy. And there is a method in a madness. And these people were mad in that they had a wonderful method in what they were doing. They knew what they were doing. People might have ostracized them at that time. But yes, of course, they worked beautifully. And how? The slide is not moving. Mehul, can you help me, please? Oh, yes. Okay. So, like we know, creation of life in a laboratory is the outcome of a beautiful mind of a scientist. It needs to be a scientist to think out of the box, to come out with something genius which no one else has thought of. And that is why Dr. Bob Edwards receive the Nobel Prize, or we have such people who are recognized maybe much later in life, but then that is how it is. So let us know what is the story of IVF in India. Well, the first scientifically documented baby in India, as we all know, was Indian reproductive biologist Dr. T.C. Anand Kumar was behind the second documented test tube baby in India. In August 1986, Harsha Chavda, India's first official test tube baby, was born at KEM Hospital in Mumbai by a cesarean section performed by Dr. Indira Hinduja. Anand was officially credited as the scientist who created the first test tube baby in India. Now, it is very interesting. He was inquisitive enough himself, Dr. T.C. Anand Kumar, and he tried to, at around the same time, he got the news that something similar had happened earlier. So he checked Dr. Subhash Mukherjee's handwritten notes and various papers, and he acknowledged that the first test tube baby born in India was actually Durga and not the one that he had helped bring to life. So Dr. T.C. Anand Kumar, although he belonged to the team that was recognized as the first IVF baby of India, yet he was good enough to research and find out that it was Dr. Subhash Mukherjee who had given rise to the first test tube baby in India, that is Durga. And he became convinced that, being a scientist himself, he wanted to give the credit to Dr. Subhash Mukherjee. So who was Dr. Subhash Mukherjee? Dr. Subhash Mukherjee was born on the 16th of January 1931, and he was a physician with a double PhD in reproductive physiology and reproductive endocrinology. And he started his work in the IVF technique in the mid-60s. Such was his passion that he convinced his wife never to have a child, as it could hamper his work. I mean, he was obviously a workaholic, and he was constantly in his laboratory day in and day out and working, and therefore he could not afford to, really have a child and look after, and therefore he convinced his wife that I'm going to devote all my life in the laboratory, and therefore we better not have children. So, how and when was history created in India by an Indian? Dr. Mukherjee worked with Sunit Mukherjee, who was a cryobiologist, and Dr. Saroj Kanti Bhattacharya, who was a gynecologist. He became the first physician in India and second in the world after the British physicians Patrick Steptoe and Robert Edwards to perform in vitro fertilization, or IVF, resulting in the test tube baby Durga, that is Kanupriya Agrawal, being born on the 3rd of October 1978. So, that means the work was going on parallel in UK as well as in India. However, how was Dr. Subhash Mukherjee different from Dr. Bob Edwards in his work ethics or in his approach towards IVF? Not only had the first attempt at in vitro fertilization succeeded, they had also successfully achieved the cryopreservation of an 8-cell embryo, storing it for 53 days, thawing in DMSO reagent and replacing it into the mother's womb a full 5 years before anyone else would do so. So what we are talking about here is that, just as Dr. Rajvi told us how Dr. Dr. Bob Edwards faced criticism. Here, Dr. Subhash Mukherjee in India was aware that his work might not be easily accepted by a very orthodox community, that too in a place like Kolkata. So, although he had produced an 8-cell embryo, he cryopreserved it rather than outright transferring it in. He stored it for a period of 53 days. And the reagent that was used, that is DMSO, it is still in use to this day. And therefore, we can safely say that, the first IVF baby out of a cryopreserved embryo was born in, 5 years later, that is about 83, in the year 1983. So in 1978 itself, we had achieved the technique of cryopreservation. So Durga was the first IVF baby born from a cryopreserved embryo. Also, he was the first to use human menopausal gonadotropin to stimulate ovaries to produce extra eggs. As Dr. Anand Kumar later said, Subhash was far ahead of his time in successfully using an ovarian stimulation protocol before anyone else in the world had even thought of doing so. And he was the first to employ transvaginal OPU as against the laparoscopic egg retrieval. So how advanced was Dr. Subhash Mukherjee in comparison to all others in the world in the field of IVF can be gauged from the fact that, I mean, all these techniques are still in use in our modern day IVF. So what was the reaction to the birth of Durga? Although, I mean, Dr. Subhash Mukherjee succeeded in cryopreserving the embryo for 53 days, yet eventually, of course, he did thaw and transfer the embryos. So the test tube baby experiment that Mukherjee was carrying out succeeded on October 3, 1978. Durga or Kanupriya was born to a childless couple staying at Lord Sinha Road. The news caused an immediate sensation, but Kolkata's medical fraternity reacted with suspicion and even hostility. When the news leaked that a test tube baby had been born, people questioned Subhash. How could he achieve something that the US hadn't? I mean, Dr. Sushma Madam just told us that we always look up to with the Western world and do not believe that something can happen in India itself. So if we ourselves cannot believe, how will the world believe us? So initially, he didn't want anybody to know what he was working on. It was an experiment that he didn't know what the outcome would be. So Dr. Subhash Mukherjee himself hid his own work from people for a long time, fearing criticism and also fearing what his results could be. So eventually, he was so much debarred from even presenting his papers at international conferences. So instead of being recognized, he was insulted and barred by the government from attending conferences and sharing his achievement. So although he was the first physician in India to perform IVF and also the first to perform IVF from a cryopreserved embryo, yet the way he was treated drove him to suicide, and he committed suicide at his Kolkata residence. And he said to his wife even that, I mean, what is the use of living when our own people are not recognizing us? So Mukherjee could no longer bear the humiliation that he was subjected to, and he committed suicide on June 19, 1981. And if you all are aware, the movie in which Pankaj Kapoor has enacted the role of, I mean, not Subhash Mukherjee, because they have changed the story, but the movie Ek Doctor Ki Maut is based on the life of Dr. Subhash Mukherjee. It's a wonderful movie with Pankaj Kapoor and Shabana Azmi playing the role. It's a wonderful movie that we all must watch, that how scientists are treated and their work is not acknowledged and they are not given true recognition, and how it is so depressing for any person who has done something so path-breaking to the level of geniosity. So after this, of course, when Dr. T.C. Anand Kumar, eventually, of course, he dug out all the handwritten notes and everything that he could find, and he delivered Dr. Subhash Mukherjee Memorial Oration at the 3rd National Congress on Assisted Reproductive Technology and Advances in Infertility Management, held at Kolkata in 1997. So it took so many years for the work of Dr. Subhash Mukherjee to finally come out in the open. And he also published an article titled Architect of India's First Test Tube Baby, Dr. Subhash Mukherjee. And it is due to Dr. Anand's effort that the Indian Council of Medical Research eventually recognized Mukherjee's work, and they all chronicled the series of events right from the time that Dr. Subhash Mukherjee started working and how Kanupriya was born. So 16 years later, Suneet approached Dr. T.C. Kumar and showed him Mukhopadhyay's notes, and this is how we all became aware of what had happened in India. So this is the picture of Kanupriya Agrawal, or Durga, as she was called, nicknamed by Dr. Subhash Mukherjee. So the baby Kanupriya was nicknamed Durga after the goddess, of course, who was worshipped in Bengal. And she later, of course, now this is again one more thing, that the family also of the Agrawal family did not come out in open in defense of Dr. Subhash Mukherjee at that time, because they themselves felt that they would be socially ostracized for doing something. So they were hesitant initially in coming out, but eventually, of course, and now we all know how, I mean, Kanupriya is on record saying that I'm not a trophy, but proud to be the living example of the work of a genius. Justice has been done to my scientific dad. So yes, not only the family, but Kanupriya now fully acknowledges the contribution of Dr. Subhash Mukherjee in bringing her to life, in giving her such a beautiful life. And so, Dr. Subhash Mukherjee's name is enlisted in the Dictionary of Medical Biography published by World Foundation among the 1100 medical scientists from 100 countries around the world for their path-breaking contributions to medical science. I mean, this is something that we all should be proud of as Indians, that among 100 countries and among 1100 medical scientists, our scientist, Dr. Subhash Mukherjee, appears there. Of course, I mean, it is just as a bit too late and too little, if we may add, but then yes, at least we have come out in open to recognize his contribution in this field. And so with this, although we are aware, and yet the government of India has yet to give him a due recognition, the due honor that he deserves. Of course, posthumous awards are not possible, but yet something that can be, some memorial or something that can be done. The efforts are still on to give him a due recognition, and Dr. Subhash Mukherjee has yet to receive the honor that he should be receiving. Now, but then, what are the lessons that we all learn from this, from whatever Dr. Sushma Madam just said about our mythological or Indian religious concepts, and from what Dr. Rajvi has also narrated to us? The lessons that we learn is that documentation is the key. We have to keep a record of all the work that we do. At the moment, I mean, something like documentation of our IVF patients also becomes tedious, but we never know how it all can be useful at a later time. So documentation is the key. More importantly, we should appreciate the good work done by people and give them due credit. Everyone has a place under the sun. There is no point snatching away anyone else's glory. So we should appreciate the good work, give due credit, and putting down anyone or any competitor will only harm our country and science in the long run. So we have to keep in mind that our efforts should be constructive and not destructive. With this, we hope that science will win, because science works and science is there for the betterment of humanity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Bindu.
Yes.
Dr. Rajapriya. And Dr.
Rajvi.
Sushma. You have done a wonderful job, and going back the history makes you so nostalgic, what we have been doing in the past and where we are today, and what we have to look for in the future. I think that is the important thing. We have to think what we have to look for in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Samiksha, we can move on.
Yes, ma'am. So without further delay, we move to the next session, a very interesting panel discussion on journey of IVF, the past, the present, and the vision. So for the session, the moderators are Dr. Vijay Mangoli, Laboratory Director, Fertility Clinic, Mumbai. He was Secretary General of ISAR 2009-2011. Dr. Shreyash Padgaonkar, Secretary General, Indian Society Reproduction 2008-2010. I would request Dr. Vijay to kindly introduce Dr. Sadhna Desai.
Thank you very much for inviting me and having me here on this wonderful panel discussion on this Embryologists Day. It is truly, it is indeed a privilege to introduce Dr. Sadhna Desai on the Embryologists Day. Well, I will not speak about her outstanding academic achievements because the very fact that she has been the president of India's most prestigious organizations of both gynecology and assisted reproductive technology speaks volumes about it. Apart from her contribution as India's first IVF baby from a private setup in 1986, I would like to highlight just two of her qualities. One is her visionary outlook extending far beyond the horizon. See, after realizing the dearth of embryologists in India, when everybody was talking that something has to be done in this field to train the embryologists properly, she took the initiative to start a comprehensive, full-fledged training program for the aspiring embryologists way back in 2013. And in a short span, she raised substantial funds and with Indian Society for Assisted Reproduction, initiated a 13-month training program. And till now, more than 80 candidates have been completed. We are fortunate to have Dr. Pratap Kumar with us here today, whose department in Manipal University played a very pivotal role in the success of this training program. And second is her altruistic inner voice to give back to the society. All do something. Now, she established an endowment program by generously donating 1 crore rupees to help the non-affording infertile couples to fulfill their dream. And she did not just give away the money, but even today she practically scrutinizes each application personally to make sure that it is being utilized effectively.
Suvi, can you move the slides?
Sure.
Saviksha?
Yes.
Very much
Controlling the slides.
joining us today. Thank you very much.
So I would introduce the other panelists, Dr. K.D. Nair, sir, President, Indian Fertility Society. Dr. Sonia Malik, ma'am. She's been the President, Indian Fertility Society, Chair, Infertility Committee, FOXY President, President, Indian Menopause. Dr. Pratap Kumar, Head of the Department of Reproductive Medicine and Surgery, Kasturba Medical College, Manipal. Dr. Surveen, Senior Director and Head, IVF and Reproductive Medicine Center, Max Group of Multispeciality, Secretary General, Indian Fertility Society. Dr. Rajvi Mehta, Dr. Siddharth Chatterjee, Director and Chief Consultant of Calcutta Fertility Mission. Dr. Pratik Makwawa, Consultant Embryologist, currently working at Vasundhara Hospital, Jodhpur, Jaipur, Lucknow, Bikaner. Ms. Deol Bose Pandey, she's ASHRAE Certified Senior Clinical Embryologist. So we will start with the panel discussion. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Shall I start sharing my screen here?
Yes, I'll stop sharing.
Okay. Can you all see the screen now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, yes.
Okay, fine. Well, it is indeed, as I told, that it is a privilege to have, to conduct this panel of journey of the IVF, past, present, and the vision. And without further delay, I'll just go to the first part of it. My first question, I think these are the clinical questions. So Shreyas, can you please take these two questions?
Thank you, the organizers, for inviting me to this wonderful seminar. We heard all the 3 lectures before about the historical aspect. Now we would want to highlight how our pioneers work all across the country and how these practices, clinical as well as embryology practices, have changed over the time and what the current generation has to say about it. So my first question is to all our seniors, Dr. Desai and Dr. Chatterjee. How would you describe the challenges that you face early on in this, when this technique was introduced in the private sector by you, and how it has changed over the time, and are these challenges different today?
Is Dr. Desai going to tell it first? Hello,
Madam,
can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, madam, please go ahead.
He's muted herself.
Madam, you have muted yourself. Please unmute. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me, Dr. Siddharth Chatterjee? Hello.
Madam, you
Unmute. Please unmute.
please click the button of the unmute.
Yes.
Yes, now it is audible.
Yeah,
It is
fine.
audible?
Madam.
Okay.
Fine,
Yes,
fine.
yes, yes.
Okay. So, my first IVF baby was born 4 decades ago in November 1986. At that time, we had no transvaginal probe for ovum pickup, and we used to do laparoscopic ovum pickup at odd hours of the day and night, because we used to determine the time of ovum pickup by the urinary LH estimation, because there were no agonist or antagonist with us. We used to do 3 puncture technique to do the laparoscopic ovum pickup. There were no camera, so there used to be a rod attached to the laparoscope, and the assistant would watch from the side and hold the ovaries, and then I would at third puncture, and then hello.
Yeah, you can move your
Yes,
mobile away
yes,
from
ma'am.
the laptop.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Please.
Yeah, and we would egg from the double needle, which was a flushing needle. We would do it, and that
Ma'am,
time.
it's probably logged in from 2 devices, therefore there's an echo.
Yeah, please keep your mobile away.
Okay, so
Yeah.
shall I?
Yes, now it is very clear.
Okay, so we would, that time there were no gonadotropies, also only HMG. HMG was available, and this HMG used to be prepared from the urine of the nuns, and they would prepare urinary HMG. So very little amount of HMG used to be prepared. So we used to have little shortage of getting even gonadotropins with that time. There were no other HMG available also. So we had a lot of rough time doing the IVF. We used to prepare our own culture media. We used to also have mice experiments to make sure that the media was working well. So we did have a lot of problem initially because there was no help available. It was beginning of the IVF journey. Of course, now things have changed. Everything is available, whatever we want, and things have become very easy. We are doing transvaginal probe. All the medias, ready-made medias are available. All types of gonadotropins are available. So things have become very easy for anybody who starts IVF.
Dr. Chatterjee?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yes, please.
the few things are to be added. At the time, it was very difficult to get continuous electricity supply in Calcutta. I worked with Professor B.N. Chakraborty, who had his first success in 1986, and he started working in this reproductive medicine after demise of Professor Subhash Mukherjee, because they were in the same institution, and both of them were my direct teachers. Now, Professor Chakraborty also did, like Dr. Shadda Desai, the laparoscopic collection of eggs. But very interesting thing is, at that time we made pneumoperitoneum with only air. We had to put the gas inside the tummy with a football bladder. And with that, without proper monitoring, we had to do the things which was difficult at odd hours of the day. And laparoscopic collection continued like that. And many a time, because there was no down regulation, we found there is a rupture. And Sir used to tell that, well, it is gone, fetegalo, like that. So when there was a scarcity of electricity supply, first we started trying with inverter. And one night we found using inverter, all the eggs were burnt out. Then we went on to generator, but generator was put outside the lab. We found the eggs were broken because of the vibration. So we had to take the generator quite long distance and bring the crank through the wear inside the lab. And the first culture started with the desiccator. That's why I have mentioned to you from desiccator to the delivery. From desiccator, he went to a pediatric incubator, then a general incubator through which the 5% CO2 and oxygen, carbon dioxide was introduced. And ultimately, we reached to the stage of proper incubator. Nowadays, we had transvaginal probe because it is not available at the time. And this concept was given by Professor Subhash Mukherjee because he collected his posterior colpotomy, and which is converted to transvaginal collection by the usual needles. And this was a scenario at that time. And this was very difficult to culture the things because the culture media we had to produce ourselves. We had to get Ham Epstein powder from where the culture media was produced. It was the Milky Water system, through the water was prepared for the media. And all these things are so cumbersome that a success becomes difficult. But nowadays, everything is channelized. You are getting everything in nice fashion. And that's why IVF has become a technology now. If previously it was a science, now it is a technology, and probably it will become industry in future. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Dr. Pratap and Dr. Nair, how do you compare today's stimulation protocol to the yesteryears? And has the new protocols improved our treatment outcomes? Are they more efficient? Are they better for our patients?
Yeah, good evening to all of you. I think it started with difficult times like natural cycles, clomiphene citrate, then introduction of human menopausal gonadotropins. And finally, we are lucky to have other things like agonists and antagonists because we don't have premature LH surge at the moment. Like we don't have to run around with the urinary kits and LH all the time. We can time the oocyte pickup because we know that we hardly have premature LH surge. And we hardly have no fertilization because we've introduced long protocol, which starts from day 21 of the previous cycle. The next slide. Also, we'll tell you about antagonist cycle. That's what we all use now most of the time. Hence, we are quite comfortable in doing oocyte pickup because we can stop the LH surge. I think that's the fantastic change because we also know the agonist can suppress a lot of the follicles and it can be too long and too much drug use, but it can be selectively chosen for certain group. But the next slide will tell you antagonist is the choice at the moment because it avoids oversuppression, poor response, effective in preventing LH surge, reduction of hyperstimulation and lower cost. I think we have completely changed the scenario by our comfort zone of antagonists or agonists.
Yeah. You see, one of the major difference between the early 90s and post-90s, the stimulation protocol, what has happened is now we are retrieving more number of oocytes. That is what has changed. Previously, only few oocytes used to be retrieved. Now we are retrieving more oocytes, and increasing the oocyte number has increased our pregnancy rate, the success rate. That has changed over a period of time. And with the protocols, antagonist protocol being the in thing these days, most of the centers are shifted to antagonist. We are getting more safer stimulation without risk of OHSS, and that has changed the difference. That is the difference between 90s and post-90s stimulation protocol. And because of this increased number of oocytes, the pregnancy rate has also improved. The chances of the cost effectiveness is also changing in period of time. That is the advantage.
Thank you very much. The next question is to Dr. Sonia Malik and Dr. Sadhana Desai. How do you see a shift in the indications for the IVF, particularly with respect to the boom in the third-party production coming up? Do you see any major difference yesteryears and this year? Dr. Sonia Malik?
We are actually, thank you very much, first of all, Vibhadra chapter for having us here today. on this momentous occasion. And of course, with Madam Sadhna Desai with us, who has actually been responsible for one of the first few babies of this country. You know what, that is exactly what is happening. We are finding a difference in the type of patient that we are dealing with now. Earlier on, we used to have different, it was all in the same proportion, same number of PCO, same number of endometriosis and, you know, inflammation, whatever. But now what is happening is the major chunk of our practice has shifted to low ovarian reserve, poor ovarian reserve, and of course, male infertility. So all of this is, you know, changing the scenario completely. And we are once again, I see all of us struggling to get these patients pregnant with self-eggs. Third-party reproduction has been a boom in the last couple of years, in the last decade, or maybe 2 decades of the last century, I would say. And it had opened a lot of hope and a lot of vistas for all of us. But however, we all know that everybody wants their own genetic child. And because of the late marriages, problems with patients getting, you know, they are aging. So, and also because of the environment, the change in environment, we find that there is a definite change in the kind of patient that we are now finding. And as has been elaborated here in this slide, they may be having, you know, an absolute need for a third-party reproduction, or there may be a relative need for it. Suppose the patient is having no testes or whatever, azoospermia completely, then he is bound to opt for a donation. But if similarly, if there is a relative indication, then of course we are still struggling to give them their own child. That is what the IVF specialists are doing these days, and that is what it is. So basically, yes, it was initially tubal factor most of all, and then conventional fertility treatment. Then fertility treatment went on to become more of a technological you know, advance, and therefore it changed into a market, I would say. From science, we are all changed into a market, and that is what has led to this third-party reproduction taking the first or the major step. And now again, we are somehow getting back to where we started, and we are trying to find ways and means to make these difficult patients pregnant with whatever way we can.
Absolutely. Too. Madam, this are your thoughts on it.
Yes, of course.
Hello.
I would say that.
Hello.
Yes, madam, your thoughts. Yes, we can hear you. Hello. Yes, we can hear you, madam. We were hearing you. Just now it stopped.
Ma'am, again, you are mute. You are mute again, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
So over a period of time, I have noticed in 4 decades, the third-party reproduction has really increased. Maybe there are more IVF centers and people are doing IVF for small indication. Initially, we used to only do IVF for genuine indications, like where patients were not conceiving with the conventional method. Patients required third-party reproduction because she was in ovarian failure or because she had no uterus and she required surrogacy. But today I feel that indications of third-party reproduction has been very liberalized. I find that those poor patients or patients with low ovarian reserve, when they have financial constraint, they quickly say yes to the third-party reproduction. Whether it is right or wrong, I don't want to comment. But people think they want a baby, best way to give a baby, give them a baby. Nobody questions whether whose egg it is. And after all, we are in male dominant society, and husband very readily agrees for the third party reproduction. Also for surrogacy, very affluent girls, working affluent girls ask for surrogacy because they don't want to lose their job, their work, and they want the surrogacy. So I think there is a need for, you know, ART law because the indications were stretched too much.
Sure. Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. The next question is to Rajvi and to Dr. Pratik Makwana. See, as compared to the facilities and the add-ons now available in the early years of the IVF, now how will you balance between the necessity and the obligatory requirements in an IVF laboratory? Because many times we see that A gets particular instrument or the technique just because B and C and D, they have it. So what is your opinion about this, Rajvi and Dr. Pratik?
So, Vijay, I would actually like to give a perspective on what it was in the early days. And we've just heard, all the clinicians speak about it at the time. So I would like to speak from the embryologist perspective. And I think to the modern day embryologist, it would just be like the early days were like Stone Age. Can you imagine that the IVF lab and the OT were more than 100 to 200 meters apart? So the oocytes were collected, the follicular fluids rather were collected, put in between saline bags in a thermocol box, and transport and walked across the hospital through the streets of Mumbai, came to the IRR, and that's where it was done. So I think this is something which would be unimaginable to anybody, that how could you do that?
Absolutely.
Today, of course, Vijay, we could go to the earlier slide. Yeah. So that was one. For the embryologist, there were no strippers or micropipettes. We prepared our own pipettes, and yes, we later started getting ready-made, but the pasture pipettes. So you can imagine the plight of denudation on day one. ICSI had not yet come in, but you can imagine the plight of denudation, and we'd use needles and try to create blunt needles, and we would scratch the dishes. Again, today embryologists may wonder how were we working. Same thing, we prepared our coral culture medium, and all my previous speakers have said it. But what was difficult, yes, we were a little more fortunate. We had a good milli-Q, milli-RO system. So you had the RO cartridges, the ultrafiltration, and etc. But the problem is the base quality of water would always vary. And we were in Mumbai where we did not even have groundwater. We had surface water. But still, there would be such a lot of batch-to-batch variations. And we did only day 3 culture. So day 5 was out. So I would say that, yes, I mean, many of the newer generations must be thinking as bad as possibly we were in the Stone Ages, but we did have pregnancies. And I think because it was everything had to be done yourself, one was very, very committed. And that's exactly what Dr. Chatterjee and Dr. Sadhana Desai mentioned. Now, coming to today's scenario, I think one thing that we really need to worry about is the air quality. Air quality definitely has declined all over, and it totally depends, because that time there were few labs. So, the locations, Dr. Sadhana Desai's lab has been located in a wonderful area, even today in Mumbai. But today the labs are all over the place. So the quality of air is questionable, and accordingly one has to take care of that, because it's a silent killer, not only for humans, but for embryos. As far as infrastructure, yes, it has improved a lot. Now, whether it is necessary, I would say, would be whether one wants to, it's not really a necessity, I would say, is to go for a modular or glass and steel. Well, it depends if you have the funds, why not? But I think it's not absolutely a necessity. As far as equipment is concerned, well, time lapse, I would say equipment for an ART clinic. As a biologist, I would love to have a time lapse. But as ART clinic, I think it's not a necessity. It gives us wonderful things. But then as a clinic, you're looking for results and not for better understanding. And yes, tools for assessment. When we come to that, AI, I wouldn't like to comment more on that. It's lots to come. And I'll leave it for Pratik, the newer generation, who possibly must have thought I was living in which era, and now explain about the artificial intelligence and other tasks, which is too early to say whether it's going to be a necessity in the future.
Yes, Pratik, your views on it.
I think, ma'am, saying that we came from a Stone Age to an age where now we have too many options to choose from. So we were confused back then, and now we are confused again. So we have come a full circle, because now there are debates going back to, should we move to day 3 culture again? So exactly. Yeah, but just looking at the necessities and the optional equipments that we have, we all know what the basics are. We need a lamina, we need an incubator, we need an ICSI station has become a necessity right now, because I think everyone's doing complete ICSIs. So even with that, say time-lapse equipment, now it is a very optional equipment for say an IVF center, but it is a very great research tool, which is often the aspect which gets lost when we're talking about time-lapse. Just to see the morphokinetic, it gives us a lot of insight. Yes, it does not replicate to an implantation rate or a live birth rate, but we still get to learn a lot more. The only downside I see of say IMSI, PIXI, so many add-ons have come, so many, I mean, they were pitted as being the next generation. Like this is how the IVF would go ahead. ICSI would say, ICSI would end, then IMSI would be there, PIXI would be there. But we haven't seen all of that replicate into, say, a good result. And all these add-ons have now almost become obsolete. Now we have microfluidics coming in, and although microfluidics is comparatively a very cheaper alternative to other add-ons that we have, it may become a necessity, but right now I think just as simple preparation methods still do just as good a job compared to microfluidics. So yes, while all these add-ons do exist right now, and if a lab has the means to arrange for them and get it, they are very welcome to. But I don't think at this point, when also ma'am mentioned about the infrastructure, I think the developing infrastructure is a good sign because we learn from the past. So even if we didn't have those infrastructure back then, and maybe we were getting 20-30% success rates, now the success rates have become a little higher, so 35-40%. Some of the role has to be, has to go into how the labs are now planned and how labs now planned, what infrastructure is used. So I mean, we don't consider it a main point, but while building a lab, it's very important to have a good infrastructure. So, and I think whenever people go into IVF or they jump into IVF, they already have now the companies, they already come with a set. You can just contact the company, they'll build the lab for you. You don't have to do any headache. So I think that also has sort of reduced the involvement of an embryologist and the ART specialist, which goes into the lab, personalizing it. Now we have very similar labs, but that also says that practice has sort of standardized in a lot of manner, but still there's still a lot of add-ons, which I think if they don't exist, we still won't see any harm.
Absolutely true. There has to be some balance between really what is truly helpful and what truly improves the pregnancy rate and what is just as a hype. Shreyas?
I would like to comment on this. See, as you said, a lot of these add-ons are touted as a great breakthrough whenever that was introduced. And most of the time, after 10 years, it turns out to be more like a marketing gimmick rather than anything substantial for a patient. Even the so-called PGTA has yet to prove its role after 10 years of intense use across the United States. So before we jump into and say, start, and the most funny part is most of this time, people who propose these technologies do not take any effort to prove that it works. The onus is on the opponents to disprove that it doesn't. And that's something which should not happen in science. And again, the same people are now saying, okay, time-lapse doesn't work, so now the AI is going to improve. So it just kind of giving us hope that it's going to happen. But ground reality still stays that the basic IVF lab, unless you are good at it, nothing works. And as you rightly said about the air quality and all, and if you want to do that, I think you need the steel and glass modular lab if you really want to give you good air quality, because it's not really possible to control that in any other situation. Coming to the clinical part again, this is for Dr. Surveen and Dr. Pratap Kumar. Dr. Pratap, especially you're in a teaching institute, which is the forefront of teaching ART specialists. What do you think there is a need to have a comprehensive medical training for specialties, fertility specialty? And do you think this training setups have changed or how they have changed the way clinicians are trained today in your institutes?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think we are responsible to teach the next generation what not to do. I'm just taking an example of one condition of endometriosis. There are many more, but an Italian club has come out with a beautiful 10 don'ts. I think we need to tell people, do not suggest laparoscopy for every endometriosis patient. Do not recommend all these kind of ovarian stimulation and IUI in endometriosis at any stage according to them, but I think we will do for earlier stage. But sometimes extensive endometriosis people are doing this kind of ovulation induction without even referring case to IVF. And the next slide would tell you that, we do not have to remove all endometriosis. A small one can be left like that and proceed for IVF, because we know that AMH goes down, ovarian function goes down. Next one would tell you that if it's a do not remove uncomplicated deep endometriotic lesions in asymptomatic women, also in symptomatic women not seeking for conception, because we know we should tell the next generation endometriosis should not be treated just because it's there. Exploitative surgery is associated with major intra and operative complications. And of course, we do not have to do unnecessary second level diagnostic investigations and so many things. Next one would tell you that no need to do all these unnecessary blood tests like CA-125. I just picked up one condition, endometriosis. It scares a patient, and somebody says it's cancer, and we go completely wrong. And the next slide would tell you that we, of course, don't go on suppressing the tissues and forever, because we may suppress for a short while and then go and do the IVF. The next slide would tell you that in a young girl, don't go and do laparoscopy just because of endometriosis. There are lots of don'ts, and there are two more don'ts. And number 9 would tell you that, next slide would tell you that we don't prescribe unnecessary suppressive therapies for a long time. It may be a short while. And the last one, there is no need to do unnecessary robotic surgery just for small endometriotic surgeries. So I think these are the important don'ts. And there are many more don'ts. I can talk for 1 hour on that. But I think the question was how to deal with the people, and that's what we as a senior person, I think we should tell the next generation. There are many don'ts in infertility. Please follow that. That's it. Surveen.
So at the outset, thank you, Vidarbha, Sushma and Bindu. It's always a pleasure being on board with you. And as far as this question is concerned, there are two things which come to my mind. One is training at a basic level. So a basic level means at an MD training level, because that is a level where they have to understand when they have to refer a patient, how to interpret a semen analysis, when and who meet the criteria of infertility basically, and how are you initiating the treatment, how are you going to diagnose. If they are trained well for this, then they are actually saving the patient a lot of stress, a lot of time, a lot of money, and helping them to achieve their goal sooner. And out of these, one of the very important things is when to refer to a fertility specialist. So basically, the training should be imparted as a separate training in the postgraduate program with a posting to the IVF lab. I remember when we were students in Gynae and I was in CMC Ludhiana, we never had enough deliveries to complete. And we would come to St. Stephen's to complete those deliveries. And in the same manner, whichever medical college does not have an IVF center, they need to be posted out of that medical college for at least 2 weeks to understand what is happening and what are the things involved. So one is this training at a basic level. And I think Indian Fertility Society is taking it up as a big project in these 2 years. We've initiated a project, Sudiksha. MP has totally been covered. All medical colleges in MP, we have given them the basic training, and we are doing it state-wise. Next comes, higher level trainings. Earlier, before the ART bill, it was short term, medium term, long term, small courses, 15 days, and somebody would start ART. With the ART bill coming, the ART bill has totally defined two things: the experience and the qualification. As the result, there is a career ladder pattern which it has brought into this whole system, which initiates both motivation and productivity from the person who is doing this. Also, it helps in recruiting these people for ART clinics. So it has structured the basic qualification required for this. What is now needed is probably a uniformity of exam for these courses and an accreditation of centers from a central body. A uniform semester exam probably. And there are a few things to be introduced. One, record keeping, because that is such an integral part of infertility. Record keeping is one of the most important parts, even legally. Then another part is psychological training, how to give therapy to these patients, and a structured reproductive genetic training program, because these are all now subspecialties of infertility. These need to be given importance. We are running these diploma courses with Amity University, 1-year diploma courses on reproductive genetics, on psychological assessments. So I think that is the need of the hour, but a certain uniformity needs to be brought to these courses where it is like an MBBS entrance exam, a MD entrance exam. Probably ART should reach that level where there is uniformity.
Dr. Pratap, do you think the introduction of DNB and MCH in reproductive medicine has changed the way clinicians are trained in the institutes?
Yes, I think because our Manipal University, we have started MCH course 2 years back, and it has definitely given opportunity for people to learn more. Though it's a long 3-year course, they will definitely learn even the science and why we are doing so many things, and the success can be elevated with the proper knowledge, because they will be trained in IVF, embryology, ultrasound, and of course endocrinology and andrology, and all connected to all these kind of various things. So I feel a structured course, as Dr. Sirveen mentioned just now, definitely matters to be a progressive, good IVF specialist.
Yeah, next slide. All of us are now seeing the rise of corporate chains coming into the IVF field. Do you think this is good or bad, or from an embryologist point of view, how do you see this scenario changing the way practices are run in the laboratories?
I think there are always pros and cons for every practice that we have or everything that is done. So if we have to go from first, I think there were two parts to it. One was the patient's point of view and the other was the embryologist's point of view. So on a patient's point of view, of course, all these chains that have come up has increased accessibility to a huge level. I can't even imagine the agony if a patient has to travel such long distances just for the sake of an IVF cycle. So that is definitely a huge benefit. Standardized protocols and, by standardization of not only protocols, it is about lab maintenance, lab creation, establishing a lab and all those things. So it is much easier because of these chains. The industries have flourished because of the chains coming in. And Prateek, do you want to take up the rest or do you want me to continue?
You can continue. I'll add on to it later.
Okay. Advanced technology, all time lapse, even laser for that matter, all of this, let's face it, you need money for it. As an individual small clinic, it is very difficult to invest in so many technological things. Whether you need it or not is a separate question, but that is what is the question. So advanced technology, definitely you would need, the bigger chains have access to advanced technology. Sir, can we go back to the previous slide? Okay. And streamlined services and reduced cost. You're supposed to have a reduced cost because of the, economies of scale, but apparently I don't know whether that is actually the case or not. We'll have to do a comparison to see whether it's actually reduced cost for the patient or not. So these are the pros. Prateek, do you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, so one of the pros which I strongly agree with is that the accessibility has improved. Earlier, patients used to fly distances to just go to an IVF clinic. Now they can probably find tens of them in their own in the very region, very close to them. Also, while the standardization of protocols has happened, it is usually limited to that corporate sector, and every other chain would probably go with their own set of standardized protocols. So a global standardization we're still lacking. But yes, technology has sort of flown in with all the investments that have come in, but there's also a con to that, with the technology coming in, with a lot of investors now backing IVF centers, there has been a reduction in, say, evidence-based medicine, because now you want to push those treatment to patients because you have your pressure from your investors. So that is also a con and can also be considered a pro.
Yeah, I think that is covered in the caveats. The highest, the greatest problem is the lack of individual attention when it comes to patient care. I think I have communicated with patients and I see that sometimes patients do feel that there is a lack of individual attention because of the workload, which is much higher in corporates or the bigger centers who have chains as compared to the individual standalone centers. And what Prateek was talking about, profit-driven treatment decisions, as well as the commercialization part. You have a profit margin that you have to, a target that you have to achieve. I've heard people saying that there are targets that have been given to them. So these are all hearsay, but I'm guessing that if a third-party investment is done to an IVF industry, they'll definitely ask for a profit. And I guess this is how it works. And when it comes for an embryologist, well, the good parts, more career opportunities, and access to advanced technology. I would myself die to work with a time lapse, which I can't afford, but I'm hoping that that is much easier when you work for a chain. And you can specialize in a particular kind of a skill development. So you could be specializing in embryo biopsies, you could be specializing in mitoticity screening. So that is possible when you work for a chain where you have multiple such number of cases coming in. And knowledge sharing and collaboration is much more easier when you work for a corporate. Research opportunities, again, standalone, it is very difficult to do any kind of research, not impossible, but very difficult because of the lack of access to either that kind of machinery, technology. Career progression is, I would hope, easier when you are in a corporate because your responsibilities can be much more than just doing a standalone center. And perks and benefits beyond salary, that is. Prateek, would you want to add on to something?
Yes, I would just want to add on that, yes, with the increase in IVF centers, it's a good opportunity for embryologists to find more options closer to home as well, rather than, say, from an embryologist from the south coming and living in north, not liking the conditions, still working because, there was no center back then. But now with the growth in centers, yes, it's completely possible. That is, I think, pros, the oil has covered very nicely. A con that I would add is that with the increasing number of IVF centers, the relative increase in number of good embryologists is pretty less, because now when it comes to training, we should have great training centers to train embryologists and be up for the tasks. Rather, we are having training centers I could be wrong, but we are having training centers which focus more on the technical skill and the theory is somewhere lost. So while research should be increasing, it's becoming, that's why the research papers that we see, they're not usually up to the mark of our competitors from other countries. That is, I think, probably one con which I would hope changes with time.
So Doyle, these are the things that you would like to highlight about the cons about the embryologist point of view?
Yes, I think the emphasis on efficiency over individualized patient care is one thing, because I have heard that most of these centers have huge caseloads, 3, 4, 5, 6 pickups happening every day. So when you work at a smaller place, when you have just 1 or 2 cases as an embryologist to concentrate on, you can take personalized decisions. For example, you see an OCC which is not that mature, you could decide to delay the ICSI beyond a certain regular point, which may not be technically possible when you have, say, 7 OPUs a day and you have, to be doing it one after the other. So certain points, it kind of becomes difficult when you have higher caseload in such kind of a bigger centers. And lesser involvement in decision making is something which, as you grow in the career as an embryologist, embryology is not just 2 + 2 + 4 and the same equation applied to every patient. There are specific things which can be done and should be done specifically for individual kind of cases that you get. Every semen sample is different. Every oocyte is different. So you could be doing certain things in a better way when you have a lesser caseload and more involvement and more direct contact with the clinician, where you can actually be vocal about, what you want, what would work better for the patient, which at times maybe due to bureaucracy, the hierarchical structure of a bigger center would be an issue. This is what I think. And a limited emotional connect. I personally would connect better with the patient if I have lesser number of, cases occurring. And at our center, we don't go and sit and talk with the patients, but at least we know through the files, we know the patient names, we know them coming in. There is an emotional connect, and that does give me an edge when I practice a particular case. I have my own way of doing things for that patient, which I am definitely sure that when you are traveling, especially to new centers, or when you have too much of caseload, you lose that. And the work ethics due to pressure to meet targets. This must, if not at a junior level, at a senior level, I think that also compromises. That's about it, sir.
But one thing I would like to tell you that where it is true that, see, in corporate setups, as you mentioned, that if the number of cases are more, I hope and I suppose that proportionate number of embryologists they are appointing. So, if you are saying that when there are 7 cases or 8 cases, but definitely it might not be handled by a single embryologist as such. So they will get enough time for 2 cases to work, as we do it routinely, restricted to 1 or 2 or maximum 3 cases, where we can concentrate on each of them and take the decisions. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Next question is to Dr. Sonia Malik and Dr. Sadhana Desai, of course. In a broad sense, is the current Surrogacy and the ART Act actually safeguarding the women from the exploitation, or is it compromising the basic rights of the motherhood? Dr. Sonia.
Technology or any kind of new method that we evolve always has a pro and cons, as has been discussed earlier. And surrogacy is no less. Only thing is that now, because of the act, surrogacy has become a very cumbersome process, both from the not from the technological point of view, but from the hierarchy and from the officialdom that entails with it. And mostly because it has become altruistic in nature. So that is why, because of that, now most of the clinicians are trying to concentrate on the woman herself in order to get her pregnant by trying new methods, so that, we can improve the efficacy or efficiency of the uterus in having a baby, rather than putting her through surrogacy. But that is not so much because of the exploitation of the surrogate, I would say. It was rather because the whole process has become so cumbersome, and we are thinking, and we are also presuming, that it's going to be very difficult to get altruistic surrogates now. That is the problem. That is why all this has arisen. And on the other hand, it is definitely denying lots of women from motherhood, because in the patients who really need it, where there is, say, absence of uterus, there not to be able to get hold of a surrogate is difficult. So also in patients where one child born is having some kind of a congenital problem, or even a mental problem, I would say, autism, for instance. In those cases, it's not now possible to do a surrogacy even. So such patients are going to definitely suffer, because they don't have options, and they cannot look at motherhood that way. Surrogacy is out for them. So it is definitely difficult, and it is going to create more problems as we go on.
Yeah, Madam Desai, your views?
Again, she's Madam, unmute yourself, Madam.
Is it better?
Yeah, right. You can.
So IVF technology has been a real boon to all infertile patients. It has really given them a new hope. Those who could not become pregnant are now hoping to become pregnant, and as the success rate increases, it is becoming more and more people are wanting to do IVF, either with their own eggs or sometimes genuine cases requiring the third-party reproduction, including surrogacy. Those women who had no hopes few years ago, they can now hope to become pregnant. So whenever any ART bill, including surrogacy bill, comes, it has to balance that this right of woman to motherhood should not be deprived of because of worry that few people are exploiting this technology. The law should be such that it should be balanced. And I think this law is right now not balanced. Maybe over a period of time, they will realize it is more not helping the women to become pregnant rather than preventing exploitation. Exploitation can happen anytime. Whatever your laws are there, people can exploit if they wish to. But the law should be balanced law to help women to have baby legally and properly.
Thank you. Absolutely true. There has to be a balance. Coming to the next part of it, my next question is to Dr. Pratap Kumar and Dr. Siddharth Chatterjee. Over past 30 years of the IVF, how do you see the role of influencing industry-driven publications on decision-making in the clinical aspects? Do you have any example of a long-term hyped concept which has turned out to be insignificant over the time? I think these are very important points. And Dr. Pratap Kumar, your views on it.
I think it's necessary to understand the quality-driven approach for translating evidence into practice and maximize value for patients for the best outcome at low cost. Generally, science was led by academicians, and we as academicians should know the limitations of any publications and also know their value. So I feel the industry-driven publications, of course, maybe Siddharth would tell that, but I would probably think that certain of these presentations matters because sometimes we read in between the sentences and we know exactly what we need to follow. So I think there are pros and cons of the same. But Siddharth would continue to tell, I'm sure.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. Now, the problem is whether you are going to use different types of gonadotropin, which one is good, which one is bad. You can get a lot of papers on that, and which might tell you recombinant is better than urinary. So all of them is industry driven. With your own experience, you'll find a very small section of patients, they are benefited by a particular type of gonadotropin. In general, all the gonadotropins probably work in unison. Between agonist and antagonist, there is a lot of fight in the past, but now you are completely shifting towards antagonist, except few cases where you have to use the agonist anyway. Regarding luteal support, this is really a help because everyone is telling you this is good and this is bad. And then whether it is natural micronized progesterone or dydrogesterone, a lot of fight between this. But you will find a very small number of patients who are really benefited with dydrogesterone than natural micronized progesterone. A large section is benefited with NMP anyway. Regarding root, there is a lot of fight about that. And another area is very important. When you are facing with patients with diminished ovarian reserve, what will the adjuvant? It's only fight, and only fight. And ultimately, we found that nothing is definitely benefiting us except a few. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shreyas, can you please take two further?
For the same question, we will pose to our embryologists and their views about the publications and do they think the many publications coming today, I think we discussed a little bit of it previously. So what do they think about how they read the papers that are published today? And are they really useful, the new therapies or new technology that are being introduced and published?
Rajvi ma'am, would you like to take it or do you want me to?
Yeah, so I would say the earlier cases, there was not much of, there was technology, but there was also a lot of basic biology. Now technology is improved and we do need the improvement in the technology for whatever we do. And of course, these technologies have come from industry in most cases and not from individual labs. So what really happens is they have invested a lot of time, money, effort into it, and they are going to try it. And if they have absolutely zero results, they're going to keep quiet about it. But even if they have some results, they're going to push it. Finally, it is up to us as the biologists, ARD principals, to actually assess the paper. So everything gets published. I mean, there are thousands of journals out there, some which are absolutely unknown, which possibly would have never seen the light of the day, but somebody spreads them around. So it is for us to evaluate what it's being given and then decide. Another issue I see is that, we look at technology as if it's going to be completely effective for everything. So it's not that one shoe size fits all. Something works in a specific group of people, and we need to identify that. So take, say, for example, if talk Pixie or X or Y, any technology, it has worked in a particular group of people, but we are not looking to identify which class of people it's working.
Exactly.
And we try to see at it should work in all cases, and then we compare and we say it doesn't work. So I think it's very important to identify technology with the patients or the type of patients, the classification of patients with whom we work, and then work on that. So I think that's how it is. Industry will try to push that you use it for everything. And in fact, that is, I think, the greatest disaster, because when they try to push it for everything, it doesn't work. So I feel that this is how we need to assess, and industry can leave it now once they have developed a product, leave it to the scientists, leave it to the clinics to see where it works. And I'm sure it would be a better situation.
Absolutely true, Rajvi, and there are concerns about this. See, the thing is, when big names, they jump into it and try to publish papers for a particular technique or for particular media or particular, the concepts as such, then the whole world get carried away, and then for years together, the same thing continues, and the people start, they make money out of it. I can give a simple example of the, say, sequential media. When we used to do IVF in mid 80s and early 90s, we used to get, good number of blastocysts as well. Now we cannot compare that with the current laboratory conditions. There are different ways to assess the efficiency. And so for when the in mid 90s, when the sequential media concept came, at that time everybody switched over to sort of the sequential media. But then now again it has come to the conclusion that that is not the absolute necessity of the cultural conditions. Even single culture medium can give the same kind of results. So Doyle, how you put it in this way?
I completely agree to ma'am. See, it's like, let us all face it. It will be industry driven, all the researchers, because it needs money, time, resources, which they have. And just because they have invested in it, they are going to push it and market it. So as embryologists, especially if we don't know how to assess papers, how to understand what paper, we can't just follow citations or, things like that, and blindly follow something or blindly follow a sponsored talk just because it was given in one of the, forums. You just have to apply your own brains. You have to know the basics of embryology. If you know the basics of embryology, then you just think, and just like ma'am said, same thing cannot be applied to everybody, as simple as that. So the ethics is on us. It is on us because the patients are coming to us. Giving them a successful outcome is not our goal. It is our responsibility. So we cannot blindly follow papers or blindly follow any brand, constant hammering of, certain things just because they are pushing it. That's what I want to add. So this is, I think, one of the papers. I just took an example. I hope they don't reach to this through YouTube. It was cited 101 times. When you search for time lapse, whether it is good or not, just read the end of the paper. The declaration itself says that who is the author and that he's a researcher in vitro life. So they have a vested interest on this.
Absolutely.
Sorry. So, right. I think I came halfway through the paper and then didn't have time to add more to it. So that is what I wanted to add.
You could convey it rightly.
So Vijay, actually what I would like to say that whenever any new technology comes in or any paper comes in, see, everything is not going to start with evidence right at the start. If something is new, you need it to give it time. So first thing, see whether it is logical. I mean, if something is illogical, how can we even think of it? For example, I would say embryo glue. I mean, a name like that as if it's going to stick the embryo. What are the basics of implantation? Can it stick? Can hyaluronic acid act as a sticky material? So that's one. Then it has to be physiological. I mean, nothing can contradict basic physiology. So if something contradicts basic physiology, just forget about it. And we are supposed to be educated. We are not skilled technicians. So we understand that it's physiological, and then comes the experience of yourself and the evidence that comes in, which is going to take time. If you're really looking for solid evidences, it's going to take time. So I think if we are using our common sense of logic, physiology, and experience and evidence, I think we would be able to discriminate, push technology or technology which has limited implications and use it in the right patients. And some, of course, we use it and it dies down and you realize, oh, we did not have to use it. But then we always don't take right decisions. It looks very unclear at a point of time. It appears clear many years later.
Absolutely to Rajvi. Here I would like to add one more point, that there is a flaw in our embryologists as such. There is no communication. If few people are using a particular thing, there has to be unbiased opinions which are to be shared immediately. That is what we are lacking. Otherwise, why we are sitting in our own shell, not to discuss all these things? Because the more we discuss, the more we'll come to the reality part of it. Don't you think so?
Of course. But that's what I said. I mean, when I started for 10 years, I didn't know another embryologist. I knew many clinicians around.
Absolutely.
And when I asked them, who is your embryologist, I wouldn't get an answer because they thought I'm going to create, idea was to discuss. And they thought that I'm going to create a trade union and ask for something like that. Later, it was easier for me to communicate with the embryologists outside the country. So, I mean, to me, it's a massive thing when we see so many embryologists and the discussions we are having. But I think there's a lot of insecurity and in both embryologists and clinicians. So the fact is, when one is confident of what one is doing, I think the communications would be much easier and better.
Correct. So, next question is to Dr. Pratik and Dr. Nair. What are the most promising emerging technologies or the techniques in the field of IVF, and how do you envision them shaping the future of assisted reproductive technology? Pratik, you would like to start, or Dr. Nair?
I think Dr. Nair sir can start, and then I will add my points to it.
Okay. I think, Suresh, you see, the promising technologies we are having right now, they are already been discussed. Artificial intelligence using this time-lapse incubators. But as a clinician, what I see is a segmental approach which has come, reducing the risk of OHHS and freeze-out strategies. And now we are moving on to single embryo transfer. That is important, giving a single pregnancy, reducing the multiple pregnancies and reducing the pregnancy losses. And the other thing which is going to come up is the IVM in vitro maturation and ovarian tissue cryopreservation as a fertility preservation method, which is going to come up in a big way in future, both for the young girls and for the even adults, female. The ovarian tissue cryopreservation is going to come in a big way when there is no possibility of having a oocyte or a embryo preservation. So these are the few technologies which are coming up. And along with this, we have to look for the safety profile of the patient, the cost effectiveness, and optimizing the outcome. Any technology which optimizes the outcome with the cost effectiveness, that is the what which is going to be lasting for longer period of time in future.
Okay, Pratik?
Yeah, so there are quite a bit of technologies which I've already discussed, like already pointed out by Sir. But we also have, all of these technologies have space for improvement. Let's talk about something as basic as PGTA. There has been so many iterations of it, PGT 1.0, 2.0, 3, now they're going for 3.0 and 4.0, but they haven't been able to validate any of these. Only the names have changed, the pitfalls haven't been addressed at all. It still remains unvalidated. Maybe in future, it could finally become something which can be utilized in a way that it's supposed to or it claims to be. We have devices which focus on the microfluidic side of things. Say microfluidic sperm sorter is now being used regularly, much more at least compared to the last 5 years. We also have seen a very promising microfluidic IVF lab on a chip. It's a very theoretical concept, but it does basically everything. It removes the embryologist out of the equation, but it sort of is a very it's very interesting thing to look forward to of how it will come. There are talks about automated ICSIs, robotic ICSIs, which I think we have seen a few presentations in the previous ESHRE, and I don't know where it will go. They have practiced it in a lab setting, but not on patients. So we really don't, we still need a lot of data to see if that can become a thing, because right now, I think for all the embryologists, the goal is to learn ICSI and not anything else. So with automated ICSI, I think they can finally focus on the other aspects of embryology.
No, ICSI is one part of it, Pratik. I agree with you. But the thing is that whatever technique you are using, whatever device you are using, whatever gadget you are using, you ultimately need a human brain, to operate that one, that part of it.
The brain needs to be behind the machine.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Also, one very interesting, other than IVM, is what I have looked at, what I was just studying a few days back, is it's called IVG. It's gametogenesis, in vitro gametogenesis.
Right.
Organ culture, in vitro organ culture using stem cells. That
Right.
could be, I think we all read a very recent report of a baby developing past the blastocyst stage in vitro conditions. We also have artificial wombs. So I don't know how that will go into the future. And with the gene editing tool, maybe with the work of CRISPR-Cas9. So yeah, that could lead to, for at least for severe monogenic diseases, CRISPR-Cas9 can be a very good tool, which blew up in 2020 after the Nobel Prize.
Okay, fine. Shreyas?
Can I say something over
technology
here?
discussion about when you said about artificial gametogenesis, another promising technology is three-dimensional biological printing and using three-dimensional cell seeding to create a support structure where immature follicle or pre-antral follicle can be grown. I think this will come much before the gametes coming from stem cells. And I think the lab studies are pretty well going on in countries like Taiwan and Korea, where 3D printing of biological material is been studied very well.
Exactly, sir. Artificial wombs have been known to be in existence for I think the first time I came across it was around 3 years back. So I don't know. They've been working on it for a much longer time than that.
Can I say something, please, if you don't mind?
Yes, please.
Can I say something?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, we are talking of technology and advances, but I think in India, what matters most is the price. We are a very price sensitive nation. And as fertility experts, as embryologists and clinicians, why aren't we looking at options or ways to reduce the price of IVF? Let me ask us a question. Have we tried to develop our own gonadotrophins in the country? China is way ahead of us. We never made use of the urinary gonadotrophin source that we have in our country. Number two, we haven't developed indigenous oocyte retrieval needles or the embryo transfer catheters, which may make it better. This is from the clinician point of view, particularly. From the embryology point of view, also, if some other nation can develop media, you, Dr. Magoli, have been developing media all your years in the initial years. Why can't we produce those and make IVF a little more cheap so that it can be more affordable? That's the question.
Yeah. Dr. Sonia, this is an excellent point that you have raised, but I would like to tell you that there is a difference, between, inventing something and marketing something. We as embryologists, we can invent or we can discover something that is being used in a much better way than what we are importing. But then to put it into the production line and then to market it, it is entirely different thing. And nowadays, particularly what I can experience is the licensing authorities, the different kinds of, the so-called obstacles created for the manufacturing level itself. It has become too, cumbersome for any embryologist to go into that and then start it.
The embryologist only, I'm talking about us as well. We haven't taken that initiative also.
True.
I'm just poking at you all. I'm just saying that we should.
That's true.
Madam, I think there are a few Indian manufacturers who are manufacturing needles and catheters. Sometime back, one of the big pharma companies had asked me to look into this possibility of manufacturing culture media. But the problem is the scale that they need to justify these investments and to justify manufacturing is not possible, because all of us are not going to convert, start using made in India culture media straight away. So that has proved to be a bit of a difficulty about the scale of manufacturing and the profits the organizations expect from this. And as Vijay said, marketing costs are really very high. So that's becoming a problem, because if you really see all around the world, there are a handful of culture media companies and they're supplying the entire world.
That's
So
Not only culture, media. See the denuding pipettes and all. I suppose only in the whole world, only 1 or 2 companies are actually manufacturing it and distributed by so many.
Every day, we clinicians are talking about this gonadotrophy not being good, this not producing good eggs, this is substandard. But we probably are so handicapped we can't do it ourselves. That's what I just thought. Maybe we could start together doing something like that rather than talking of CRISPR and all that. Maybe that's way, to adapt to or adopt a foreign technology is becoming easier for us. We are taking that, we have that, but I think let us all become Lakhwani chappals and flex, in order to make it better for all of us. That's what I feel. I don't know. I myself may not be able to do it, but I'm trying to poke the youngsters and tell them to do it.
Absolutely. But I think we have to overcome that mental block that we Indians cannot.
Overcome that. We have to.
Absolutely true. Dr. Pratap Kumar, reflecting on the past, what pivotal moments or breakthroughs had the most significant impact on the development and widespread adoption of the IVF?
I think the complete change of male infertility is a wonder now, because the introduction of ICSI, etc., because severe oligospermia, obstructive azoospermia, TSA, etc., ICSI seems to be the breakthrough in the IVF program for so many years now. Other we had nothing to do with them. And of course, regenerative medicine, IVF is a big controversial event. How much is going to work out, we do not know. But I think because of embryological expertise like you guys, understanding the embryo and its behavior with proper selection of the same at the time of transfer has completely changed the scenario of IVF, and that's what is most exciting is the ICSI what has come into the world of ART.
That's true. And if you ask me, there are only 2 things that have changed the IVF as such. One is the ICSI and one is the vitification. Vitification has completely changed the way we used to do the cryopreservation in all respects.
Yes, absolutely.
That's true.
Madam, over the years, you have seen the way the patients coming to you. As we know, we started off offering IVF just for tubal factor, and now each and every indication under the sun is treated with IVF. So in your practice, has the demographic changed and have the preferences changed regarding IVF treatment for the patients over the last 40 years?
Yes, I have seen changes because the generations have changed. Few years ago, in the older generation, the women used to come with their mother-in-law and they would ask for, if we would suggest IVF, they would say, please don't tell any of my family members that I have undergone IVF, and keep it a secret. Otherwise, nobody will get married to my child. Today, the younger generation is completely different. They have access to social media. They have access to all that is happening in the world. And they are getting married late. They are all working. So at least in city, I find that patients are coming and demanding IVF. They are not shy of getting an IVF done, and they don't even hide it from anybody in the society. By and large, of course, there are conservative patients also. These patients, but I find the younger generation is aware that age-related infertility, there is not much choice. Formerly, social media, like Shah Rukh Khan and Amir Khan and all, they used to have so much of publicity. People thought that they can have baby at any age. But now they are slowly realizing that it is better to freeze their eggs, or when they are low, when they are young and they are married and they want to have a baby late, then they should freeze their embryos so that they can use it for a later date. So things are changing because people are now more aware about IVF and they don't feel shy to get an IVF done.
Coming to the younger generation, Dr. Pratik, what do you think the new technologies of artificial intelligence, automation will have it add to our add to the benefit to our patients for the years to come?
Yeah, I think AI will come in some form, even if we are saying that maybe not for the next 5 years, for the 10 years, maybe it'll come sooner than we expect, because it has already started to come in a lot of different fields, and reproductive medicine is not behind. Even this time in ESHRE, almost 60-70% lectures were just on AI, on people developing apps to track their ovulation, people having self-help kits, people, but in clinical practice, where AI would probably, I think one of the major uses that will come very quickly is to grade the embryo. Because even with the new AI coming with the new time-lapse machines, is essentially to standardize the practice. Because even right now, if you look at all the morphometrics that we see, there's a lot of inter-observer variability. Maybe AI with their database can help standardize it much more. We have seen 2D programs which use AI to grade your blastocysts. A lot of them have been used and have been tried, not to their full extent. So maybe that could be an artificial intelligence. That could be the way they enter. Then we also have AI for sperm selection. I mean, for sperm morphology, since the semen analysis has started, we're still using the same procedure. There has been no major development in looking at the sperm morphology, and even with some like total motile sperm count completely removing morphology from the equation. So maybe AI could help in better sperm selection. So yeah, AI will come into IVF in some point and maybe will help us benefit choosing the better embryo, choosing maybe one of the claims that was made when time-lapse first came in was that it'll help you choose a euploid embryo. So maybe going forward, AI can actually help us do that rather than just claim it. So there are a lot of possibilities, a lot of ways for automation to come into IVF. They're all experimental, very theoretical right now. Plus, let's see. And one of the key points that I always have is that all of this database is always based on the patient population of Europe or the United States. In India, we have such good demography of patients. Why are we not using that database to build an AI software or to contribute to the AI software to improve the results in our country as well?
That's true, but it is true that the AI will come in a big way. At present, actually, what the flaw I can see in the AI-based, the devices, particularly for the morphokinetic evaluation, is generally these AI models, they come with a single camera fitted into that particular microscope or the incubator. And this has the greatest disadvantage, because when, for example, if I see a single pronuclea during the fertilization, I will definitely rotate it and see and confirm that there is no second pronuclea hidden, beneath, which is not possible at present. And AI, what AI does is it actually captures the image and sends it to the database. So the entire results that will be generated by the AI software entirely depends upon what the information is fed to the software by that particular camera or the hardware. So here where I find particularly a slight flaw into that. What is your take on it?
So exactly.
What I feel is we are looking at the morphokinetics over and over again, and it hasn't worked over last some time. So I think the role of AI will be looking at a different type of pattern rather than looking at the same morphokinetic one more time. So we need to look at different events in the cytoplasm, or different ways of looking at events, migration of organelles, something very different than what we are looking for last 10 years. Maybe AI has more sense in there rather than trying to reanalyze what we have already.
So
Exactly.
can I add something to it? Oh, sorry.
If I can just add one point, is that the current AI systems, they work on a 2D model, like Sir rightly pointed. We take a picture and then we put it in the database, and then we get a grade according to the database or the number of embryos that they have in their database. Now, with the current AI systems, the time-lapse is supposedly, the new machines are supposedly to come with the new AI software, and that can possibly use the morphometry rather than just the morphometry analysis that we do, probably improve their gradation system.
Okay. Yes, Doyle, you want to add something?
Yes, sir. So I think what we need to understand is AI is not, if we leave everything for AI to look into and then analyze and then give us a result, that is not true. It is more of it is augmenting our decision. If, for example, the example that you gave, that you saw one PN and you would rotate it and see it, if on a two-dimensional image, it might not be possible, which is absolutely true. There are certain models where they assess based on the depth in a video given by a time lapse, but that is for time lapse. That is not for incubators, clinics who don't own a time lapse. So I think the gist is AI is here to stay. AI will come, but consider AI as a good student. It is just about who's training that student. And I would rather train AI than train, it is easier to train AI than to train student. And it completely depends on what you are teaching and who is teaching that student. So it completely depends on that.
Right.
Dr. Survin, since the beginning of IVF in this country, many a time there was not much of a communication between the clinicians and the embryologists. Today we see maybe we are more integrated at this, we have forums where we meet each other. So how do you think the collaboration between the clinicians and embryologists, how is it evolved over the time, and how will in future it will improve our success and our ability to take care of our patients?
So I think the best way I can answer that is, how do I as a clinician view my embryologist, and how would I look at how the relationship would evolve between the clinician in our department and the embryologist. So basically, earlier on, there was only every science has an art and a science, and embryology, the art was the practical skills, and the science was the knowledge and the critical thinking and the problem solving, which only comes with knowledge. So the ART bill very nicely put it all together, making sure the knowledge as well as the practical skill is there. So there is now, because of these new competencies of embryologists, the super specialty branches are evolving, like regenerative medicine, stem cells, bioengineering, AI, like we were talking about. And I view my embryologist as a person who's going to manage these very high quality services. He has to be intellectual, and he would be an intangible asset for me. So he becomes my partner in everything I do. So it's actually making sure that you are investing in a co-partner as far as an embryologist is concerned, so that you can make a good teamwork in an IVF center to give good results. Now, we also have to understand as clinicians that these technology-driven things like the AI and all these emerging technologies like epigenetics, regenerative medicine, like Dr. Sonia said, they come at a cost. And for India, cost is very important. So it is going to vary whether the patient can afford or not afford, then the individual interest of the embryologist, the academic interest of the embryologist. So me as a clinician, I would need to understand that there may be some disparity in clinical embryology practices with all these 3 points, whether patient can afford, whether the embryologist is interested, and whether there's an academic need for these. So that's another point where one has to be at the same level with the embryologist. Besides that, the duties and responsibilities have changed substantially. The embryologist is not working behind the scenes. Our embryologist is doing proper counseling of the patients, is telling the patients the results, is available to the patients. So in our center, he's very much involved in formulating policies, protocols, in identifying the critical factors which are responsible for a success or maximizing outcomes. We ask him to troubleshoot. The ability of prompt problem solving becomes a very important quality for me as a clinician. I also see him as mentoring the junior embryologist with the latest techniques. So that is another fact, that he becomes a mentor in the clinic. He becomes somebody who knows his subject and can teach. Besides that, the non-technical skills of the embryologist. Well, it's very important. Time management, stress management, because the clinician and the embryologist are in it together. If there is no time management in the lab, there'll be no time management in the OT. Hence, it's very, very important to have an integrated multidisciplinary team taking care of all these factors. A good personal communication between the embryologist, patient, and the clinician is very, very important for a good ART center. And the embryologist's role, because of all these factors, super specialization, educational qualifications, scientific development, which requires high skill, I view the embryologist as being a partner, a co-researcher, a collaborator, and a manager of my ARTs.
Thank you. Dr. Sonia, your views?
I kind of echo whatever Surveen has said, but somewhere down the line, what had happened was that the general impression was that it is basically the embryologist who is responsible for the results of an IVF lab. And the clinician somehow took a backstage because it wasn't so important for the clinician. Anybody can make eggs and anybody can make, stimulate. That was what was. But now, over a period of time, we have realized that it is not just the embryologist, but it is also the expertise and acumen of the clinician, which is very, very important. As she said, that is why it is so important for both of us, the clinician as well as the embryologist, to work hand in hand and as a team. Nobody is above the other one. We, as clinicians, have become molecular biologists ourselves. I never studied so much of molecular biology in my career, in my undergrad days or postgraduate days. Now we are getting into the inside of every gamete ourselves in order to understand what exactly is happening in embryology. So therefore, it is it's not just the embryologists who have to be very competent. And as Surveen says, they have to be super specialized. We have to complement them. The clinician has to complement the embryologist, and so also the embryologist has to complement the clinician. It's only then that the two arms of a human body are going to function together. Otherwise, we are two different hands working at random, not at all, just randomly, not going to achieve anything worthwhile and useful. So a teamwork is always very important. A good ART clinic or a good ART center is that where both the arms of this team are strong. Only then can we have good results and outcome.
Absolutely true, Dr. Sonia, because generally till now it has been the practice that when the results are good, then everybody used to say that it is because of that particular aspect of it, whether it's embryology or the the problem starts when there are poor results or when the unexpected outcomes comes from a good so-called good patient. At that time there should not be a blame game, but both of them had to sit together to understand the issue and then try to solve it. Absolutely true. Next questions is to Dr. Pratap Kumar and Dr. Siddharth Chatterjee. Based on your expertise, what is your vision for the future of IVF and assisted reproductive technology? And what key areas of the research and innovation do you believe are most critical to pursue in the coming years?
I think Siddhartha, you want to answer first?
Thank you, Pratap. Future of IVF will be fertility preservation on social grounds and third-party reproduction. This year is going to expand, particularly on social ground, the fertility preservation. In the research aspect, health of embryo, grading, and the handling in the single media, that should also come into our knowledge, because for a prolonged culture, time to time taking it out probably is going to cause a lot of problem. And here, whether artificial intelligence can influence or not. Implantation and endometrium. This area is very, very important, and research must actually emphasize on that, because I believe in the failure of IVF, endometrium has a lot of things to do. Whenever you give a very good embryo, you don't get a pregnancy, then endometrium is definitely at fault. And just looking at the endometrium on its vascularity, it may not be a very good function in endometrium. So we have to go deep into that. We have to go for the research, have to see all the, chemicals those are coming in, like all those chemokines and cytokines, and whether it is endometriosis or tuberculosis, what is going to cause problem, particularly later genital tuberculosis. This is to be kept in mind. And you have to think about proper luteal support as well, because there is a lot of controversy about luteal support. And we have to we have to work on it and find out which is the best luteal support to get a successful pregnancy. Thank you.
Absolutely true, Dr. Siddharth. And nowadays there is new perspective that is coming up, not only endometrial receptivity, but endometrial selectivity as such. that has the capacity and the ability to select a particular embryo. Dr. Pratap Kumar?
Yeah, I think I would just emphasize on one point for the future is just the implantation, because we've all got stuck to one pregnancy rates of 40%, 60%. It doesn't mean really anything. But what happens is, why can't we get 80% results tomorrow? Because we have not understood one thing, implantation, including endometrial receptivity assay came and is almost going. And there is a lot of research has to be done on that aspect of success. And because when everybody asks us patients, you said everything is good, embryo is good, endometrium is good, why there's no pregnancy? How to answer them? So I think implantation process has to be researched in a very good way in the future, and that will be the future of ART.
Okay, thank you very much.
Dr. Rajvi, you have worked from the very beginning of IVF in the IVF labs. So what are the key inventions in the last 40 years that has totally changed the way we practice IVF in the laboratory today?
Hello, Rajvi? Please unmute yourself.
Sorry. So I would say in terms of innovations, those that have created a maximum impact are primarily ICSI and vitrification, no doubt about that. But when I say ICSI, I would like to emphasize that when I say ICSI, it's for male factor. I get very highly amused when people talk about ICSI for all, because it is like saying that the embryologist is as good as the zona, but we don't even know how the zona works. So even cumulatively take the best embryologists in the world, but they still cannot play the role of the zona because they don't know what the zona does. So I strongly don't believe in ICSI for all. I also wonder that when people talk about ICSI for all, my counter argument or analogy is that go to the best surgeon in the world, and if they have a headache, and they would definitely go for medical alternatives if possible, and not go for surgical alternatives or an invasive procedure. So it's as simple as that. Where it is possible, give it, don't jump to it. So ICSI, yes, vitrification, no doubt about it. And I think the other things which have made a difference are the small things. Culture media, prepared culture media, it was not difficult preparing the culture media. Yes, it was tedious, but then a lot of things that were tedious. But the variability in the water was the biggest problem. Even if we ran it through 5 types of distillation or used all the fancy filtration systems, there was a lot of batch to batch variation. And I think when I talk about sequential, because that gave us a possibility that we could get a high percentage of blastocysts. Again, I'm not going to get into the debate of blastocyst culture and the epigenetic changes, but culture media and the small things, the denudation pipettes, the ICSI needles. I mean, imagine the time when one had to prepare needles. ICSI needles, preparing pipette was quite a headache, and to prepare ICSI needles, put it through the bevel, put it through 3 machines, angulate it, smoothen it. I mean, when it came in, I felt, am I a glass maker? Where am I going to use my brains if I'm going to be doing all this? So I think it is these small technologies which have actually changed. There are many technologies which came and did not work. As I said earlier, it is to select in which cases it works. So whether we talk of IMSI or we talk of PIXI or we talk of time lapse, I think what needs time lapse, of course, is the greatest research tool or a tool to understand biology. But I think these things one has to identify, as I said earlier, which cases is work. So I think it's small things that have made a big difference, according to me.
Thank you, Rajvi. Used to Dr. Suri and Dr. Nair. With the advancement in the genetic screening and editing technology, what are your thoughts on the potential benefits, ethical concerns, and related to these tools used in IVF? And how do we strike a balance between the progress and responsible practices?
I think you have to be very much ethical in your thinking when you're thinking of genetic screening and editing technology. These technologies are to be used for a very specific purposes. They cannot be used for all everyday practice, number one. And we have to be very ethical when we are trying to use this technology. We cannot keep on creating more and more what you call babies, and with the thought that probably this is going to work out into improving their outcome in future. No, we have to be very ethical. we should be using the technology in a very safeguarded manner. Because the screening, the genetic screening and editing technology especially, it has to be validated on a long-term basis. We are not looking at a short-term basis. They have to be validated over a long-term period, long-term basis, to see what is the effect of this technology. Dr. Swin can add further.
Yeah, so the ethical considerations, especially the genome editing, came with the CRISPR, because everybody got very, very anxious about what we are doing, that we're changing the germline and passing it down to future generations, and are we justified in doing it? And many of the countries banned it, especially in the 2014 summit which happened. They were actually scared, not just about changing future generations, they were scared of off targets, that is editing in the wrong places, of mosaicism, where it could be in some places and not in some places. And thirdly was also your non-therapeutic enhancement, that is the wrong use of these editing, which would lead to a generation which, because of the non-therapeutic and enhancements which has been done, it could lead to a new generation which could be totally different. And is that justified, is what they said. But the people who were pro the gene editing said that it definitely has a purpose as far as the PGD is concerned, because prospective parents with a homozygous disease who wanted their own children, this was the only answer. Again, in polygenic disorders, this was the only answer. There was no other answer. And for families who were objecting to PGD as a process. However, the non-therapeutic part of it, the non-therapeutic use, people said can be addressed by policy and regulations. But again, we have seen that policy and regulations are not uniform across the globe. Some countries allow, some don't allow. We see our patients going to other countries to get it done. And there is an ethical consideration where if you look at it, where is the informed consent for the person who's actually being affected? That is the embryo and the future generation. There is no consent from them. It is the parents taking decisions. So are we justified is one big query. And the second is, are we truly taking an informed consent? Because even we do not know what are the risks which are going to occur in the future. So is it a true informed consent? And lastly, this is a technology which is going to be available only to the very wealthy. And are we creating, by germline, are we creating individuals of a different definition because their genome has been engineered? So we definitely have a moral and religious, maybe religious also, obligation somewhere to some religions, that we need to relook this whole thing, have proper regulations, have regulations across the globe if we want it to come. It cannot come without research. So the research on this should not be banned. There may be indications in medicine where it is required. Research should carry on, but getting them into clinical practice requires a lot of thought, a lot of regulations, a lot of ethics. That's my take on this.
Dr. Swin, one of the side effects of this technology, I am very sure, time to time we keep on having requests for a designer baby. They say they have read this thing and couples are coming to have the designer baby, you see.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. The wealthy are going to have a generation which is like different, defined by the quality of their engineered genomes. So that is something we have to look into. It's a long-term perspective. Like it's a long-term perspective. When China reduced their population, it is impacting them now. So is Japan. So if we look at it now, we're going to see the effect in 50 years. That are we going to have the rich being genetically modified and the poor being not genetically modified?
Thank you, Dr. Saveen and Dr. Nair. Now coming to the last part of it, last question is to obviously Dr. Sadhna Desai. As senior practitioners, how have you witnessed the changes in the patient attitudes and expectations towards IVF over the years? And how do you see these attitudes shaping the future in the field?
As I see, all the patients from last 4 decades, they seek the IVF specialist help only to become pregnant. They want to become pregnant. We have to see that time to conception has to be reduced because they get fed up of trying 1 cycle, 2 cycle, 3 cycle. There we have to do some research as a clinical embryologist, as a clinician. Research is going on, diverging in artificial intelligence, in stem cells, in genetics. It's all in genetics. What, as you all as a embryologist, how do you do anything? How, as a clinician, how do I help my present patients to become pregnant faster? So we want research to take place, but at the same time, we have to optimize every step of IVF in such a way that the cost gets little more affordable, the pregnancy rate improves, and the patient doesn't take long time to become pregnant. Only if we can succeed, then patients will be happy. Patients don't care what they will do in after 2 generations or 3 generations. They come to your clinic and say, I want to become pregnant. How much it will cost me? How long it will take? So I think research is necessary, but it is we as a clinician, you all as an embryologist, are only just talking about what research is occurring, how clinically right now it is affecting. So we should think of present also and not keep on thinking of the future. So please also try and have some talks how we can do this. This is what I personally see. Patients are seeking currently. They are not talking what my grandchild will want. This is what I personally think. So we should also pay more attention to what we are doing to our patient currently.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you for joining us and making this panel discussion so elaborative and so nice and so informative. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bindu. And
Thank you so much for
I would like to thank my co-moderators here. They were very thought-provoking questions.
Yeah, very nice. It was
All the
wonderful
moderators,
discussion.
both Dr. Shreyas and
Very-
very, very thought-provoking questions.
I mean, we'll have a
Moderators,
formal vote of
moderating
thanks. Please
panelists,
wait,
yeah.
everyone, for a
We'll
group
have one
photograph
photo
and,
also.
Thank you very much. Thank
yes.
you very
Yeah.
much.
Ma'am,
And
we'll
we'll
have
have
a
one
formal vote of thanks and a group photograph
group
first.
photo. Please wait for the
okay.
group photo. Please.
Okay.
These are different occasion. We'll have a group
Please
photograph.
remove the then slideshow. Yeah,
Put on the main screen, I think. Yeah.
main screen. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, the moderators and the panelists, for such an interesting and active participation in the panel discussion. So now, coming to the end of the session, I would now like to request Dr. Bindu Chimote, ma'am, an eminent embryologist who's known for her artistic ways of presenting vote of thanks. So, ma'am, over to you. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Samiksha. Can you see my
Yes.
screen? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it was a wonderful, wonderful session. Who could have thought that on the occasion of World Embryologist Day, we will have such a lot of aspects to discuss, clinical as well as embryological, the past, the present, as well as the future, and such a wonderful group of stalwarts and legends and eminent personalities we have in the field. So yes, today our webinar was, I mean, IVF Charcha 45 years ka lekha jokha. I'm sure we have really encompassed the 45 years and of course look towards the further 25 years as well, probably with the young embryologists here with us. So, so first and foremost, let us all congratulate ourselves. Clinicians, IVF specialists, as well as embryologists. Let us not be like Tom and Jerry, running and chasing around one another, because we know that together we can and we will, and our ultimate goal, as Dr. Sadhana madam said, is to give a pregnancy to the patient. So we all are working towards that goal, and let the Tom and Jerry team work together in harmony to achieve this goal. And of course, to thank each and everyone, I may not really be able to do justice, but I have just categorized so that, I mean, Dr. Sadhana madam and Dr. Siddharth, who have seen the first generation of IVF specialists, be it Dr. Subhash Mukherjee or Dr. B.N. Chakrabarti sir. So Dr. Sadhana Desai madam and Dr. Siddharth Chatterjee sir, thank you so much for joining us and giving us such wonderful insights into what was there and what is yet to come. So legends are champions. They grow, they win, they conquer. There's a legend behind every legacy, and there's a blueprint behind every legacy. Legends toil to pave a smooth path for us. And as you can see, we had this kind of a TV screen before, which would be disturbing. And from there, we have strived, our legends have strived so that we get a wonderful HD picture in front of us, a clear picture in front of us. They made our path smooth for all of us. Thank you so much once again. I mean, I may really fall short of words, but then from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. And of course, among our panelists, we had an array of stalwarts, tall, towering personalities in the field of IVF, and they are a strong link between the past and the future. As you can see in the animation here, they are passing on the baton from the seniors and to the juniors. So Dr. K.D. Nair sir, Dr. Sonia Malik ma'am, Dr. Pratap Kumar sir, Dr. Surveen Guman, I mean, you all have been such wonderful. We know you all personally as wonderful IVF specialists, but especially in the panel today, you all made it so interesting. So thank you all the experts for being there. And for you all, I would just like to say one line: any simple idea ignites your ambition, and you all pass on the fire of motivation to the next generation. And you are creating footprints for all of us to follow. So thank you so much for being such guiding lights for us in this field. A special thanks to my dear friend, Dr. Rajvi Mehta. She is among the most experienced, the most knowledgeable, and the most humble of embryologists that we have come across. It is really difficult to find someone who has been there, done that, and yet is so grounded. I mean, she has been for a short while, I think, with Dr. Bob Edwards as well. And you just have to give her a call or send a message, and she's there for everything that you need. And she knows all the what's and how's and when's and who's and why's and where's. She has an answer for everything. So thank you, Dr. Rajvi, for not only being here for this event today, but for all the events that we do and when we call up for anything that we need. Thank you so much once again. And of course, the next generation, the Gen Next embryologists, we had the very budding, dynamic Dr. Pratik Makwana, Dr. Doel Pandey, who have emphasized that what the future holds for us in this field, be it robotics or be it artificial intelligence, be it stem cells, but then you have to remember that there has to be the human link. Any technique or machine will not be enough, or I mean, you have to have those feelings, the mind that thinks. In the previous lecture, like we mentioned, how there is a beautiful mind that is there behind every creation. So how much ever technology we might use, the human brain will still be there. That will be the strongest. And I hope we can convey this message. We use technology for ourselves, not become slaves of technology, is a warning sign for all of us when we go future with a vision in this field. And last but not the least, we had such wonderful, dashing moderators, very dynamic, dashing, yet balanced, learned moderators, because they have, again, they are the link between the past and the future. And I'm really, really thankful to Dr. Vijay Mangoli and Dr. Shreyas Patgaonkar. I mean, you sailed the boat through very nicely, because to make an interesting panel out of questions. I mean, I couldn't even imagine the kind of questions you have created for everyone today. So it was a wonderful panel, very well moderated by the two of you, in coordination, in sync, bringing out the best from all the panelists, esteemed panelists that we had here. So thank you so much, Vijay sir and Shreyas sir, for being there.
Thank you.
And like always, our academic partners, we cannot thank enough Dr. K.D. Nair sir and Dr. Surveen ma'am for being the force, I mean, a force to reckon with for us, for all the webinars that we do. 26 webinars wouldn't have been possible without your support. So thank you so much for being there. And I would also like to thank Dr. Sushma ma'am and Dr. Pragati Khadkar, to Sushma madam in the capacity of President of NOGS. Of course, she is our very own as the Secretary of IFS Vidarbha chapter as well. But thank you so much for being our academic partners for all the events. And of course, many thanks to our MOCs here today, Dr. Samiksha and Dr. Avanti, for coordinating very well with one another and carrying out this whole event in a hassle-free manner. No technical glitches, so to speak. So thank you so much, Samiksha and Avanti, for being such wonderful hosts and masters of ceremony. And like always, it is always a truly inspiring leader who guides and sails us through. So many, many thanks to our leader, a dynamic leader, Dr. Sushma Deshmukh Madam, the Secretary of IFS Vidarbha Chapter, President of NOGS. Thank you so much, ma'am. Again, words can never be enough for your guiding light. And of course, our team members, the entire team in every webinar, they come up together to have a successful event. Our technical support team, Corona Remedies Limited, I mean, they were born out of Corona during the times of Corona, but they have been standing tall with us in all our webinars. It is due to their technical support. Mr. Vinod Taivade, and especially for this webinar today, Mr. Mehul, who has all the backups ready with him so that there is no technical problems that we face. So thank you so much, Corona team, for being with us. And I have a little poem on the occasion of World Embryologist Day. Is it okay if I read it?
Okay, please go.
Is it all right?
Yes.
I know the time is extended, but just quickly, it's called Garbha Sanskar. It was written originally by Dr. Natachandra Chimote in Marathi. I have just translated it into English. So Garbha Sanskar. Through the eyepiece of my microscope, when I see you, 5 days old, full-grown blastocyst of a few hundred cells, eagerly waiting to be transplanted from your bivouac of a petri dish, housed in the incubator of a laboratory, to the cozy comfort of your home, the innocent realm of your mother's womb. Whether born as a boy or a girl, you will enter a whole new world of deceit and contempt. Keep both your eyes and ears wide open, for the crap of caste and religion will corrupt your virgin years surreptitiously to establish your identity on your 12th day christening. They will sprinkle holy water on your angelic pure eyes and contrive to train your vision to what you are and are not supposed to see. Snatching away your freedom will be their birthright. Your future, they will decide. A drivel to tame your social behavior will trap your mind. They will exert all their superior power to govern upon you, for you to never be you, to be their mirror image, their alter ego, their clone. And so, I exhort, tread cautiously, hold vigil, own a heart that heals, love irrespective of caste or creed, bring justice to those in need, have compassion but be discreet, speak your mind without disrespect, seek advice from the wise and stay away from falsity and vice. No doubt, enjoy your life, but choose a path of purpose. Slog passionately to achieve your goals, but always be grateful and full of humility. Most importantly, never forget your roots. While experiencing the transition from the makeshift artificial world of a laboratory to the natural cosmos of your mother's soft uterus, where her love will nourish your being in her maternal blood, do not ever forget the Garbha Sanskars provided by your laboratory parent, the embryologist. So this is a salute to all embryologists. It is, in a way, we are instilling the Garbha Sanskars in our laboratory with how much passion, with how much integrity, honesty, and ethically we behave. Maybe we will pass it on to the next life that is coming up. So thank you so much for your patient hearing and letting me speak out my poem as well. Many, many thanks for a wonderful event today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
In the superb.
Thank you.
As usual, fantastic.
Thank you.
And really, it was a really wonderful webinar. I personally feel very much thankful to everyone for doing really. It's a diamond webinar, it's a precious webinar.
Yeah, very good.
The moderators were also, thank you, moderators and everyone.
Every single
Really.
person. Yes.
Just
Thank
we
you
can
very
have
much.
a photograph now.
Mr. Mehul, you can take a photograph, please.
Can you just stop your sharing?
Yeah,
Stop
yes.
sharing. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
How do you take all? Put everybody on the main screen, I think.
Dr. Surveen is not there. Can you please join on the screen, please?
Can you please open your videos, everyone, please? Emosi also did very well, huh? Dr. Avanti.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Where's Samiksha?
Yes, she's there.
Yeah. Yes, she's there. Only
I
Dr.
put
Surveen
everybody on the
cannot
main
see.
screen, I
Yeah.
think.
Okay, I have taken
Yes, Mr. Mehul?
it.
Done?
Yes, taken it.
Done?
Okay,
But
thank
everybody
you.
is not on the screen.
Yeah,
Thank
Dr.
you very much.
Surveen is not
You
there.
put everybody
I
on
think
the screen.
Madam
and
has
then
left. Dr. Vijay Mangoli sir has also left. But
Thank you very much.
thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you very much,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bindu, lovely.
you. Bye-bye. Bye.
We'll be having another interesting webinar on the 10th of August, and that is why I was preparing for that webinar as well. So by mistake, I wrote 10 July instead of 25th.
Okay.
Please do join for that webinar as well. Thank you so much.
The photography session is over or what?
Yes,
It's over.
It's
Yeah.
over, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Sushma, Dr. Bindu.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you,
Pleasure
sir.
having you,
Thanks.
sir.
Dr. Nair.
Yeah.
It's a great pleasure
Bye-bye.
to see you all in this one platform.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Nice. Lovely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Out of
Thank
time
you.
was excellent, Bindu.
Thank you so much.
And Sushma, nice of you to initiate the whole thing, and pleasure was mine. Thank you.
Yes, we were discussing we will do something and we did
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. Okay, bye-bye. All the best.
Bye. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Samiksha.
Bye.
Good
And
night,
Avanti,
ma'am.
thank you
Samiksha,
so much.
Avanti, very nice.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us the
Okay.
opportunity. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, bye-bye. Good night,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye.